What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was banished and became the monster they created? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Within a rectangular room that was white with a single rectangular table in the middle of the room. On the table was something small in humanoid shape that was covered with a white blanket. In the room were three figures. Two were blonde-haired males, although the one with short spiky hair with two bangs that covered the side of his face was wearing a sleeveless haori with flames near the bottom, while the other was long straight hair that was tied into a ponytail, was wearing a green jacket with multiple pockets into it. The only female was red-haired, wearing black clothing that one might see at a funeral. "Are you sure you want to do this, Minato, Kushina? There's still time to back out now," the straight-hair man asked the other two. "Of course, Inochi, it's our fault, and even if we couldn't be there for him, then the least we can do for him is to experience his last memories," Minato said with tears in his eyes. "I have to, my baby boy was suffering and I left him to it. I have to know what my own action caused," Kushina stated with her head lowered and a handkerchief covering her nose and mouth. "Okay then, now to remind you what's going to happen." Inochi then removed part of the blanket to allow the head of a 4-year-old child with blonde hair and 3 faint whiskers marks. The child was sunken and the skin was barely covering the skullbone. Minato and Kushina could barely look at the child. Regret and remorse filled their bodies and Kushina fell to the floor. "I'm so sorry, baby, mommy should have been there. She's so sorry," Kushina chanted in her mind over and over while Minato kneeled down and grabbed her by the shoulder. "I know," Minato said, the only thing he could to try and calm his wife. This was their sin to bear together. Kushina nodded before both got back up onto their feet. Inochi waited until it was over. While he couldn't understand the feeling that his friends were having, he knew that he would act the same way if his beloved daughter died. Once it was done, he continued, "As you know, many of the Yamanaka clan have the lightning chakra nature. We can use it to light up the brain, and while we can't bring back the dead, we can show the last memories the dead had before death. This is what you two want, isn't it? To experience the last memories of Naruto-kun?" Minato and Kushina nodded, "Yes." "Okay, then know that I won't be with you as you experience it, as I have no Daisuras to see and possibly ruin my friendship with you." Inochi stated his intent and reason clearly. "I know, this is Kushina and my sin to bear. All that I would ask you to do is to keep the connection up." Minato smiled as his long-timed friend. But Inochi could see that the smile was merely a facade. In truth, Minato was afraid to feel and see what he had done to his young son. After performing the hand signs needed, he yelled in a more subdued manner, "Here we go then, Yamanaka Hajutsu. Saigo, Yamanaka secret Tachinke." Moment of death, Inochi closed his eyes in concentration of his Tachinke. Kushina and Minato were holding each other as they braced for the last moments of their son's short life. Memories 2 days before death. Naruto's point of view. Naruto was not a happy child, nor was he angry. The small 4-year-old was in his barren room save for a bed, drawer, desk and some clothes. The blonde-haired child with faint whiskers marks on his cheeks was doodling on his desk, the picture being of a family of 4 with 2 males and females. The males were blonde with the child having 3 whisker marks. The same thing with the females except they were redheads. "This should get Ka-chan and Tu-san to notice me, soon we play together," Naruto thought. He didn't know why his mother loved playing with his sister, Mito, and his father giving her what she wanted. Maybe she did something sooner than he did and that was reason why they played with her more. All done, Naruto smiled as he finished his drawing. The drawing took him 3 days to finish as he wanted everything to be perfect for when he showed to his parents. The door to his room barged open and a 4-year-old girl entered. The girl had red hair and 3 whiskers marks on her cheeks, same as him. Her face was slightly chubby, making her look like a tomato. Naruto overheard his parents one day that they looked like their parents when they were the same age. "Naru ni, what's that?" the girl asked. "This, Mito ne, is my picture of all of us together," Naruto exclaimed in his excitement. "Ka-chan and Tu-san will be so proud of me." While he was smiling with his eyes closed, he didn't see the gleam in his sister's eyes as she was thinking of a plan. It was one of those, you snooze, you lose, gleam. This was proving true when Mito grabbed the picture and pushed Naruto out of his chair. Mito then ran out of the room as Naruto was in shock at what happened but later gave chase. Mito had already run down the stairs when Naruto exited from the room. By the time Naruto made it down to the living room where his parents were having a meeting with others, Mito had already presented the picture as her doing. Both Kushina and Minato were giving praise that their daughter was a genius for making a drawing. "Ka-chan, Tu-san, that's my drawing. Mito ne didn't make it," Naruto tried to explain to them. Both Minato and Kushina didn't want to hear, "Be quiet, Naruto. Don't try to take your sister's accomplishment as your own," Minato sternly told his son. "But Mito ne didn't make it, I did," Naruto continued to tell them. "Be quiet, Naruto, you know I don't like lying in my home." Kushina scolded him. "But I'm not lying. Enough. Kushina, please entertain our guests as I bring Naruto back to his room for his timeout," Minato told Kushina as he picked up Naruto and placed him over the shoulders and walked out the room. Naruto continued to plead his innocence all the way before father and son reached Naruto's room and Minato placed him into the room and locked the door on the outside. "Don't even think of coming out until tomorrow, think about your actions tonight," Minato yelled from the other side of the room. Naruto ran up to his door and continued to pound into it, pleading his innocence. When that didn't work, he pleaded that he was sorry. Minato didn't wanted his guest to be disturbed, went back to the door and used a sealing technique to soundproof the room and restore the room if Naruto even break it. Naruto continued to pound the door all night. One day before death, Naruto has been banging for as long as he could. At first, he went over to the far side of the room and used it as an impromptu bathroom until he could get out. However, sometime late in the night, Naruto decided to not do this and continued to bang the door for every single moment. He did not stop to sleep, no longer did he stop to pee or go number 2. Naruto had continued to bang late into the night until his body shut itself down, leaving him in his own urine and feces. Morning had come and Naruto had just woken up. Seeing his feces and urine on his skin, Naruto had spit and rubbed it all over his skin thinking it would get rid of it. "I'm dirty and Ka-chan doesn't like dirty boys," Naruto thought. However, it wouldn't leave his skin, rather it settled in like it was a second suit. Naruto nodded at this thinking it would be better looking than before. Seeing the sunlight, Naruto ran up onto his bed and over to the window that belonged to his room. Every day, his parents would leave by the front door. It was one of those things he noticed about his parents. Running up to the window, he saw his mother and father just as they left the gate along with Mito. Banging the window until he couldn't see them anymore, he then fell to his knees as he couldn't believe what he just saw. "They don't want me, do they? That's why," Naruto thought with a frown on his face. He then smacked his face, his eye aches as the waste from his body on his hand had touched his eye. "Bad Naruto, no thinking like that. Ka-chan and Tu-san always loves you. Always." October 10th, day of death. Naruto was on the floor, too weak to even move. His throat was dried and his body was red with rashes from all the waste from his body that was due to his choice. As he was near the door, he weakly banged it with the near non-existent hopes of getting out. In his mind, he could just picture the monsters that was his parents. No, they were no longer his parents by any means of the word, laughing at him, with their fingers pointed at him with the rest of Konoha joining in. Oh, how he hated the leaf. What had he done to truly deserve this? This is Mito's fault. The dark thoughts from Naruto began to take a life of their own. I'll kill them all. Yes, yes, yes. Naruto began to chuckle darkly as loudly as his throat would allow him due to being parched and sore from all the yelling. He saw bright lights coming to life and fading. Weakly he turned his head and saw fireworks in the night sky. Realizing it was his birthday due to the fireworks, he froped the dark thoughts and decided to weakly sing himself happy birthday. After all, if no one wanted to, he would do it himself. Ha happy bye beer birthday to you. Ha ha py bye bye rth da to yo you. Ha py bye rth dit to you, and nar you too. As he got to his name, Naruto stopped singing. His eyes were still wide open but the light that signifies life were gone. The body that used to belong to Naruto is now nothing more than an empty meat suit. He had used whatever time he had left to comfort himself to the fact that he was alone. Yamanaka Hijutsu. Saigo Kai, Yamanaka secret technique. Moment of death end. Minato and Kushina fell to their knees when the jutsu ended. Minato was comforting Kushina as she was sobbing uncontrollably. Inochi was panting due to the amount of chakra used to fuel the technique. There was a reason why it was considered a secret technique, while in truth, the jutsu cost nothing more than a C rank upon activating. It was maintaining it that was a hard part. The farther along one wished to view of a person's death, the more chakra is needed to keep it up. Kushina kept sobbing. She knew something had been wrong when he didn't come down on the first day. But like a fool, she had brought into what Minato said about Naruto wanting to be alone. She had taken so many classes on child rearing because she wanted to raise her child with perfection. To keep them safe, in fact while she knew they would wanted to be shinobi, she couldn't help but want to deny it. Have them trained to be shinobi, yes, but only as a safety measure in case someone attacked the village. As she was wailing, she couldn't help but think from her side of things, the other side of the wall so to speak. One day before Naruto's death and 2 days before finding out, morning had come with Kushina and Minato having hangovers. As the parents made their way to the kitchen, Mito came through the door all shy with her head down. Kushina had never seen this with her daughter, so she had to ask, "Mito-chan, what's wrong?" "I lied when I said I drew it. I just wanted you to be proud of me." Mito pressed her 2 index finger while not looking at her other's face. Kushina had to sigh. Mito flinched when she heard her name. "I'm disappointed at you. When Naruto comes down, you better apologize to him." "I supposed I should do the same." Minato agreed. "I supposed I should say sorry too. I should have believed him." They waited for Naruto to come down. He never did. "Strange," Kushina remarked. "Do you think he's mad at us? Let's give him the day off to cool. I'm sure he's still mad at us for what we did." Minato explained. Kushina wanted to argue. She felt something was wrong. It was like an itch she had to scratch. Ignoring the feeling as best as she could, she responded, "Yeah, you're right." With that out of the way, the three left to do whatever it is they do. They never did see Naruto as his eyes had bags, his skin tightening showing his skull, his bright blonde hair filled with feces and gold stains of pee as he spent all day banging on the door even when he had to go to the bathroom, banging on the window with no sounds coming from it. Final day of Naruto's life and 1 day before figuring it out. October.10, 4 years after the retreat of the masked man and the sealing of the spilt Kyuubi into Mito and Kushina. Kushina and Minato were woken up by Mito jumping up and down on them when they were sleeping. "Wake up, Ka-chan, Tu-san, it's my birthday." Mito shouted before running out the room and into her own to get changed. "I want to see Hinata and Ino-chan." That day, due to Mito's energetic body, Kushina and Minato left the compound that was their home. Kushina's feeling had become even stronger, but she once again ignored it to celebrate her daughter's birthday. By all rights, she should have been dead the day that masked man attacked. However, thanks to Sarutobi and Danzo, who both gave their lives to bargain for the sealing of the Kyuubi and her life. Kushina had been shocked that Danzo had been willing to die. After all, he was a well-known warhawk who sent kids to die after taking away what made them human. But that the last words he said before the Shinigami took his soul was, "The old monkey's soul wouldn't be enough to do this since he's nearly out of time left in this world. But with our lives together, it should make a difference. No one, not even the god of death, wouldn't take a 2-for-1 deal, especially if we are the ones offering. If I'm not willing to die and suffer damnation for what I believe, then, I wouldn't have created Root now, have I?" Kushina smiled at the thought. While the old hawk wasn't one of her favorites by any means. He did bargain so the Shinigami wouldn't take her to his realm then. He gave his life so she could see her children as they grew up, and for that she was willing to thank him. That night as the fireworks were shot into the air, Kushina thought that maybe enough time has passed and he had cooled down. She nudged Minato, "After we get home, we should talk to Naruto. No child should be alone for their birthday." Minato took her hand into his own and smiled at her. "Even if we wanted to talk. He's probably asleep right now. But you're right, we'll talk first thing in the morning." Kushina couldn't help but feel like something had truly gone wrong. It was almost as if something inside her had just died. October 11, 1 day after death and day of realization. Kushina and Minato along with Mito were in the kitchen waiting for Naruto. When he didn't come down, Kushina got worried. "Minato-koi, do you think Naruto is still mad at us? Do you think it's also we forgot to celebrate his birthday with him?" "I don't know, let's go check up on him." Minato said. While he appeared calm, he was worried. It's impossible for a 4-year-old child to hold such a grudge for a long time. Nothing bad happened, right? As the trio walked to Naruto's door, they saw the ceiling matrix that Minato had put up 4 days ago. Minato had to smack his head. No wonder we couldn't hear anything. I put those up so Naruto couldn't make any noise during the party. Kushina instantly got worried. If he was in there for over 4 days without food or water, then he would be in critical malnutrition. Motherly instinct acted up and her hair spilt into 9 parts and waving around. Fix this right now. Minato, knowing when Kushina was acting like this, acted in a quick manner. He got rid of the matrix, unlocked the door, and gently opened it in case Naruto was sleeping in front of the door. When the door hit something, Minato slid in first, and what he saw traumatized him to the point of him falling to his knees. Kushina pushed her husband so she could have space and did the exactly same thing when she spotted what happened. The feeling she had ignored was the same motherly instincts that told her that her son was dying, and she just brushed it off. Mito, wanting to see, being the curious child she was, pushed the door so she could have space. The force of the push turned the object halfway. What Mito saw had traumatized her. In front of her was her dead brother. The cold, lifeless eyes stared into her own as if he blamed her for causing his death. Mito fell into her knees and sobbed, sending Kushina and Minato out of their shock. Minato ignored the smell of feces and pee and grabbed Naruto and Hirai shined over to the hospital even though he knew it was too late. Kushina stayed behind to comfort Mito. Out of her thoughts, she still continued to wail on the floor. Rocking back and forth slightly, she crossed her hands as her eyes were wide. Reliving the very moment where she saw his dead eyes. The ones where he blamed everything on her. Oh, she could hear it, the angry voice of her child as he belittled and disowned her as his mother. Minato was the more calmer of the two. While he was filled with grief at his action, his training to be the next Hokage had instilled into him a sense of outwards calmness. It was thanks to that he wasn't in the same condition as his wife. Thank you, Inochi. I'm sure you would like to return to your wife and daughter. Minato said without even looking at Inochi. Inochi nodded and went for the door. He stopped and took a look at the couple before walking out. Kushina, I know it's difficult, but we have to let go now. We can't do anything for Naruto. Minato tried to reason with his wife. No, I want to stay with Sochi. Like I should have done in the first place. He will stay by my side forever. Kushina screamed out, trying to get out her husband's grasp. And what Masumi, what about Mito? Minato asked. Mito was the second reason why he would stayed calm. The girl woke up with nightmares ever since the birthday incident. While he couldn't do anything for Naruto now, he could do something to help his daughter. But he wouldn't suppress the memories, that would be a disaster waiting to happen. He would lose all trust if the process was undone somehow. Kushina stopped and looked at Minato defeatedly. Okay, let's go. Minato smiled at his victory in getting Kushina to stop her moping on the floor and grabbed her hand leading out of the room. He never did see the gleam on his wife's face, nor the smile. The smile of the insane and broken. It has been 3 years since the incident of the Namikaze family. Where the place was once a happy household with children laughing, flowers were growing, and if you were walking nearby, you could smell the ramen that came from the house every day around lunchtime. Alas, it has changed since then. The ground was silent as if it was still in mourning, the flowers were while still there were dead as if no one decided it was worth it. The place to the outside world is now haunted. Anbu, due to the Konoha's Charter Section 3, which dealt with the ruling Kage at the time, Paragraph 5 which dealt with crimes committed by said Kage, had arrested Minato, who was ex-Hokage at this time, and placed him in a maximum high-security prison. Minato, having read the charter, understood what was happening and went quietly to preserve some form of dignity he may have left. As he faced trial, he didn't even try to defend himself and was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and while he would still keep his chakra when he was out, he would be serving as special Jonin for the rest of his life. While Minato believed the sentence was too small in his opinion, figured out the jail time was just a facade. No, the real sentence was that he would just be a detergent against Kumo and Iwa in case they decided to attack. Mito was 7 at this time, was smiling cheerfully as she went to the ninja. Rest of the kids made fun of her due to her father's action. Thankfully, Hinata and Ino stood up for her and still wanted to be friends. At night through, she would have nightmares seeing her brother's face. She imagined how he would bang the door and would verbally reassure himself that his parents loved him and they would save him later. She also imagined him hating her and their family. She refused to call it hers, cursing her and their parents' very name and soul. She couldn't eat without seeing his face. It was as if he was staring into her soul, questioning why was she allowed to eat while he starved to death. Kushina Uzumaki, as she refused to have that man's last name, returned to active duty. She went on S-ranked missions and disappeared for days or even months on end. No one stopped her, thinking she was merely expressing her grief in a practical manner. Money poured into her bank accounts, yet she didn't spend much of it. Whenever she wasn't on mission, she was at the library studying as if she was looking for something. People began questioning soon, fearing in that Kushina's grief, she would be like Orochimaru. Kushina's relationship with Mito also began to deteriorate. Kushina also blamed Mito for the death of Naruto, thinking that if she hadn't tried to pass the picture off as hers, then none of this had to have happened. She wouldn't kill Mito, oh no, she had already lost one child with his blood all over her hands due to her neglect. She wouldn't have another with actual blood on her hands cause she wanted vengeance. The village of Konoha had taken a pretty huge hit. A popular leader had left his child uncared for and used shinobi skills to basically kill him. Clients began to wonder if this might happen to them if they hired Konoha shinobi. It came to the point that they began to seek other hidden villages to do hire. Where Konoha was once called the strongest village due to multiple missions and famous shinobi, they were now third right behind Kumo and Iwa. Kumo and Iwa had been pretty happy with this chain of events. Iwa, who while respected him for his prowess as a shinobi, hated his guts for the event that earned him his moniker of Yellow Flash, which is killing 3,000 of their troops in a single second. It said to the entire world that either Iwa was just weak to lose that many men in an instant or Minato was just that strong. Iwa had their pride and Minato had to go and crush it. Kumo on the other hand was just happy that they finally won up Konoha since the Gold and Silver brothers killed the second Hokage. They eventually got greedy and tried to take the Byakugan from Konoha but was stopped thanks to Hiyashi, the Hyuga clan head. Kumo eventually reformed itself under the new leadership of after leading a coup d'état against his father Tsunade had came back and was instated as the next Hokage due to her being the only one truly worthy both in bloodline as the last Senju and her reputation as one of the strongest people in the world despite the huge debt that she had, and being one of the last two Sannin that Konoha had despite there was also Jiraiya to which half of the village protest and had threatened to riot if the self-proclaimed super pervert was to lead. That's 3 years in a nutshell. Onwards with the story. Nighttime. October 10, 3 years after the death of Naruto. Konoha Cemetery. Within the cemetery, one location was being dug. If anyone could have read the gravestone, they would saw the gravestone say, Naruto, age 4 beloved son who was taken from this world far too soon by his own family's hand. Inside the hole, Kushina was digging with the shovel until she had reached the coffin which Naruto's body resides. As she had reached her target, she opened the lid to see her son's face. Due to the seals placed on the coffin, his body was well preserved. Kushina could see the thin frame of his body, his yellow hair become more light rather than the brilliant gold it used to be. The whisker marks are so thin you couldn't even see them. In truth, he looked like he was just sleeping. Kushina had caressed the face of her darling boy. Seeing his face steeled her resolve to perform an unspeakable act. She was going to revive her dead son. Knowing how dangerous it was, Kushina had studied up on seals and chakra where previously she wouldn't due to her hyperactivity. When she had married that man, she gave him all sealing knowledge that the Mito who raised her, not the other one who was of her blood, gave her. It was the reason why that man even mastered his technique in the first place. She studied every theory, question and mumbo-jumbo that was out in the nations on chakra and seals no matter what. Kushina had even bribed Tsunade in that she would pay off every debt of hers if she gets to see the forbidden scroll of seals. Tsunade wanted to refuse but her debt was so large that it would drain Konoha's money to the point of being in the red, had relented. It was there that she learned of the Edo Tensei Jutsu created by the second Hokage. To her mind, she was one step closer to her son's revival and the money was worth it especially since most of it came from that man. She had studied on the mechanics before giving back the scroll later on. Studying it, she had found several flaws to the jutsu. The jutsu doesn't technically revive the person, rather it uses the body as an anchor to the world with ashes covering the body to make it look like the person whose soul returned to the mortal plane. Kushina didn't wanted that, she wanted total and full revival. Later that year, the Uchiha clan decided to now was the perfect time to revolt and placed one of their own as the village was weak due to the backlash. Tsunade was forced to kill most of them using Itachi as the double agent. When it ended, most of the clan had died and the few to survive were children or young adults. Makoto wasn't among the ones living, but Kushina didn't care about that. She had saw her best friend once played with her son during one of the playdates when the children were toddlers. In her mind, Makoto tried to steal her baby boy. Why should she get him? She already has 2 boys, was the thought. Whimpers interrupted her thoughts and she was back on ground level after a leap up. She found the whimper noises coming from multiple children with chains wrapped around them. The children immediately shut up in fear of the crazy woman, as they had nicknamed her, would do to them. They were all orphans who the crazy women had kidnapped and placed in a room. She would come in at random times and feed them, sometimes 2 or 3 times in a setting. She would say, "You have to get stronger, Naru-chan, after what happened with that man," or, "I know I should have been there for you, but I'm here now and I'll never leave you, Naru-chan." Knowing that kids were now quiet, Kushina went back into her thoughts. Where was she? Makoto. So while she didn't care for her former best friend anymore, their blood should be useful somehow to bring her son back. It was said that the Uchiha clan had great spiritual energy after all. Finished with her thoughts, she went back down into the hole to grab Naruto's coffin and leap out of the hole for a second time that night. She grabbed his body and placed it on an altar that was already written with special seals written with the combined blood of both Uzumaki and Senju for physical energy, and the Uchiha for spiritual. Reaching into a bag that she kept near the altar, she grabbed the Shinigami death mask from the Uzumaki temple from one of the notes that Mito gave her. Kushina placed the mask on her face and summoned the death god. The death god was a spectral figure with white hair and purple skin wearing a white kimono. The eyes were black with no iris or pupil, with a monk's bead in one of its hands, a tanto in the other. Kushina began to speak with the mask on her face. "Shinigami, I asked for the soul of the one named Naruto Uzumaki whose body is now on the altar. In return, I offer the souls of the young ones wrapped in chains." Kushina also threw another incentive. While the death god is supposed to follow the commands of anyone who was wearing the mask, she didn't want to make the death god resent her for messing with his domain. "I will also throw in that I will destroy this mask and any knowledge I may find in the mortal world." The Shinigami, instead of answering to the bribe, used it tanto to slice in front of him, creating a tear. The death god then placed the tanto in its mouth and placed its hand into the tear and reached out. In its hands was a glowing blue ball that the Shinigami placed into the body before cutting the souls of the children out of their bodies and swallowing them whole. It then left with Kushina waiting for a bit before taking the mask off and smashing it. Kushina then pulsed her chakra into the seals and waited. A patrol team of Anbu of Tiger, Hawk, Grasshopper and Gorilla came to the cemetery and questioned Kushina. "Jonin Namikaze, state your business as to why you're here." Hearing the last name of him turn her rage unto the Anbu. Using her chains, she wrapped them all up, squeezed them until they were dead. With that done, Kushina turned around and watched the ritual begin when ashes covered Naruto's body. She was unfazed, as she had studied and experimented on other people before truly using it on Naruto. Her senses led her to turn her eyes to the left. In her sights was the 5th Hokage herself, surrounded with multiple Anbu. The blonde busty woman looked at her kinsman with a hint of shame. She knew something was wrong with Kushina when she had asked for the forbidden scroll of seals and had planted Anbu agents to watch over her, but somehow Kushina had given them the slip when they reported back that nothing was wrong. She had even placed Kushina in a mental evaluation by Inochi's father, seeing Inochi couldn't be trusted due to being too close emotionally. "What do you think you're doing, Kushina?" Uzumaki household. A blonde boy with whiskers marks on his face was staring straight into her eyes. Why did you kill me?" the boy repeated. A young girl of 7 woke up with sweat on her face. She was a redhead with the same whiskers marks as the boy she dreamed about. "You're still haunting me, aren't you, Ni-san?" she thought. She looked on top of the drawer next to her to see a picture. The picture of a family of 4 with the children with arms around one another as the adults stood behind side by side. All of them had a smile on their faces. I'm so sorry, Naru-ni. I ruined our family, didn't I? It's funny how something so small like lying can ruin things, huh? Mito thought with a small frown. Flashback. 3-year-old Naruto and Mito were wrestling outside while Kushina was sitting on a chair near them with a pitcher of water and 2 cups on the table next to her. Despite Naruto's best efforts, his Jinchuriki sister managed to pin him down to the ground. Oji, Oji, uncle, uncle. Naruto cried out. Did you see it, Ka-san? I did it. Mito screamed out with both hands in the air, her mouth in a wide grin. Kushina clapped her hands. Congrats, Mito. However, the score is tied 20-20. You have to win tomorrow in order to be in the lead. Now, help your brother up and have a cup of water. Mito pouted. Ka-san, I won, didn't I? Why do you have to ruin it? Kushina just smiled. It's to stop you from having a big head. Now help your brother up. Mito continued to pout but nonetheless help her brother up while he was still recovering from being roughly pinned down. You alright, Naru-ni? Naruto just nod. Arigato, mi-ne. Mito slapped him in the head. What did I say? Call me Mito-sama, for I will be Hokage, she exclaimed as she struck a pose, after Tusan of course. Leading to Naruto wondering if anything was actually wrong with his sister. Kushina stood up from the chair. Alright, Mito-chan. Why don't you both come over here for some water to drink? Seeing Mito's pout at not being taken seriously, Kushina had to smile. She truly was blessed to have 2 children and being able to see them grow. Minato later opened the gate leading into the compound. Tadaima, I'm home, Minato stated loudly, causing both Naruto and Mito to rush to the gate and hug Minato. Tusan, both shouted loudly and Kushina smiled before responding, Okari. I missed you all while I was working. I have an idea, let's take one right now, Minato said, with Mito and Naruto cheering. Any time spent with the family was good enough for them. Go put on some other clothes, the ones you're wearing are a bit dirty. Mito and Naruto race up to their separate rooms and change, leaving Minato and Kushina alone in front of the compound. It's a great idea, Minato-kun, but why so soon? Kushina asked. Minato smiled. While I was working in the Hokage Tower against my greatest enemy, paperwork, I looked on my desk and saw a photo of us, but Mito and Naruto-chan weren't in it. I began to think of all the pictures we have. We don't have one with all 4 of us. I want one with all of us placed on my desk and our rooms to remind us of how truly lucky we all are. Minato explained. Kushina smiled. Hi, we truly are lucky to even survive what happened 3 years ago. I fear to think what would happen if one of us or even both had died. Kushina and Minato then kissed each other, conveying the love each had for the other. Unfortunately, the moment was ruined by 2 voices shouting, Ew. Both turned around to see both Naruto and Mito were dressed easy to slip in kimonos, one's for the children who want to be independent. Kushina chuckled at the scene. You won't be saying that when you find somebody to love, right, Mina-kun? Mina-kun? Kushina turned her head back to face her husband. Minato's bang covered his eyes, leaving small flames to be seen where his eyes should be. His left hand was clenched into a fist as he brought into an upwards posture, showing his back palm to the children. No one is good enough for my children, they won't be leaving for the next 20 to 40 years. In the background, a scream of, Youth, knocked Minato for his, daddy mode, as he shuddered. Anyway, let's get our picture taken, Minato said as he fought the urge to shudder and curse. Flashback end. Mito walked out the room and walked down the hallway until she reached the stairs. She went down and walked into the kitchen. She then opened the refrigerator and got out some food and water. She then walked back upstairs until she reached a room that had no design save for a plate that read, Naruto's room. This was a ritual she had been doing since the event that destroyed her know their family. She would bring food and water to the door and knock on it. Ka-san would open the door since she took over the room and gave the master room to Tsunade, who was living with them, and take the food. When Kushina didn't open up, Mito got worried. Ka-san was never late for the ritual. She opened the room despite Ka-san saying to never do it and entered. The room was empty save for a few scrolls on the bed. Mito decided to take a look and couldn't understand a word written. She decided to wake Tsunade up and have her read it to her. So here she was, at the door to her, their parents' room, and knocked on the door. Tsunade opened the door with a frown and crazy bed hair. What do you want, Mito? Can't you see it's nighttime? Tsunade asked with a yawn. Mito showed the scroll. I found this in Naruni's room. Could you tell me what's on it? Mito asked. Tsunade nodded and took a look. What she saw woke her mind up from her tiredness. She looked at Mito and asked seriously, Mito, this is very dangerous. Are you sure you found this in Naruto's room where Kushina's sleeping? Mito shook her head vertically signifying yes. I found it while bringing food up to the room. Ka-san didn't open the door like she was supposed to and I saw it when I opened the door. Tsunade looked so serious, Mito had to wonder what bad things that Ka-san may have done. Present time. Kushina stared at Tsunade with cold eyes. What are you talking about, Tsunade? Kushina asked. Tsunade stared back with fury in her eyes. You know what I'm talking about, Kushina. Experiment on people, kidnapping to name but a few of your crimes. All for what? To perform a revolted act. This is not you, Kushina. Kushina responded with cold indifference. So what? I will Naru-chan back in my arms again and I don't care if I have to kill other people to do so. Besides the Kushina you knew is dead. She died when she allows Sochi to die like that. All alone but I won't know. I take care of him. He will love me and we'll be together forever. When she finished talking, the ashes of the altar started to disperse into the air. Now, hush, my baby boy is now back. Walking to the altar, she looked down at the altar. On it was a healthy boy with straight red hair with his eyes closed. Kushina smiled. She had managed to change his looks to look more like her. After all, he probably hated looking like that man. He had opened his eyes to show the world that his irises were now purple. Kushina smiled and prepared to hug her Sochi. Imagine her surprise when Naruto pushed her away and ran away from the cemetery. Kushina couldn't believe what she saw. It was to the point where she fell to her knees. No, Sochi wouldn't push me away. He loves me. He's disoriented. Yes, I'll just find him and give him an explanation and we would be together forever. Naru-chan will love and hug and be with me for all eternity. Kushina mumbled to herself as her eyes glazed a bit. Tsunade looked at Kushina with a sad expression on her face. While Kushina and her had similarities in the fact that both lost loved ones. The differences between them is the fact that she wasn't exactly the cause of their deaths and she knew that Dan and Nawaki would never blame her for them dying. If it wasn't for that she knew that she would be in the exact position. While she wouldn't like what she had to do it. Anbu, restrain her immediately and placed chakra suppression seals on Kushina immediately. I'm charging her with illegal experimentation, kidnapping, grave robbing, and unauthorized use of kinjutsu. Anbu moved to follow her commands. Kushina was still continuing to speak to herself when she felt weaker than she was supposed to. Knocked out of her thoughts, she saw herself being tied up. She tried to get out of it using brute force. Let me go. Naru-chan's all alone in the dark. I have to go to him. Kushina screamed out in rage. Why is everyone against her when all she wanted was her baby? Tsunade in her commanding tone ordered the Anbu, half of the force, go find the boy. A fourth of you, go wake up the clan's heads and the civilian representative. I'm calling an emergency meeting. Naruto. Naruto was running through Konoha's alleys to get away from the ones that cast him aside. Running into a dumpster, he fell to the floor. Getting back up to his feet, he continued to run as fast as he can. Once he was sure he was far enough, he stopped to catch his breath with a hand on the wall. Looking back and see no one was following him. He continued to walk at a much slowly pace than the fierce running he had been doing since he had finally woke up from the nap he'd taken. For some reason, something in him told him to move. When he followed it, he dodged a tanto aimed at his neck. Naruto closed his eyes as he fell on his butt. Opening them, he saw 4 Anbu circling him with their tantos out in front of him. Naruto crawled backwards to the wall. As he does so, he wondering why they were after him. I say, we just killed this abomination right now. Falcon answered as he gripped his tanto in a reverse grip tightly. Hokage-sama told us to restrain and capture it. We need it alive, Falcon. Spider holding her tanto in a like one would hold a sword. I agree with Falcon on this one. This is a revolted act against Naruto Dono and we should kill it. Dog was agreeing with Falcon. He respected Minato and Kushina a lot. So killing the abomination that took the body of their child seemed like the best thing he could do. Fine, do it without me. I didn't sign up to kill kids. I'll go inform Hokage-sama. Spider left the group. Hang on, Spider, I'm coming with you. Protocol and all that. The final member, Mole, went along with Spider, leaving Naruto along with Falcon and Dog. What's going on? Why do they want to kill me? Naruto thought. Falcon sliced Naruto's head off as Dog sheathed his tanto and used a fire jutsu to burn the corpse. Well, that's done. Got some cards as we wait for Hokage-sama to come? Falcon asked his partner. Dog just got out a deck as they sat down next to the corpse. But as they got ready to deal the first hand, two tentacles stabbed both Anbu agents. Both looked down at the tentacles and saw it was connected to the corpse. I am impossible, Falcon stated as both were absorbed by the tentacles, leaving clothes and mask dropping to the floor. The tentacles retreated back into the body. A black ooze overtaking the corpse then later retreated, showing Naruto was fine although he was naked. Naruto changed in that he appeared to have aged a little. Before he was about 4 feet and a half. He was a solid 5 feet tall. Streaks of black could be seen in his hair. Naruto held his head with both hands as he rocked back and forth. The rush of information from the Anbu coursing through his head like the flow from a rapid river. From it, he knew that he had died, what Kushina, as he refused to call her mother, did, to the body that belonged to Naruto Uzumaki. Who am I if I'm not Naruto? Am I really human or am I a monster? Naruto thought. Due to his senses had increased due to eating, as he had no other similar to compare it to. He heard footsteps coming. Naruto, with a more analytical due to eating, the Anbu decided to bolt then and there. Mole and Spider were in front of Tsunade and a platoon of Anbu. Just through here, Hokage-sama, Mole stated as they walked into the alley. However, only the clothes and mask of Falcon and Dog on the floor. Tsunade picked up the mask of Dog and looked at it. Spread out and search for the boy. He can't have gone far. Be careful through, we don't know what we're dealing with. Hi, the Anbu chorused before most of them had disappeared in a leaf shunshin. Tsunade closed her eyes and sighed. I need a drink, she thought. Konoha's council room. The Konoha council room wasn't fancy. In fact, it was just a large room with desks and chairs set in a circular fashion. The Shodem Hokage, Hashirama Senju, while a humble man, had built the room this way to promote equality between the clans. So troublesome, why did Tsunade-sama even call a meeting like this? A man with his hair set in a pineapple shape with 2 scars, one above and one below his right eye. He was laying his head down on the desk with his eyes closed. Shut it, Shikaku, or do you want me to talk to Yoshino-chan into getting the skillet on your ass again? A woman with spiky untamed brown hair with vertical slit eyes with red fangs marks on her cheeks. Shikaku's eyes snapped open as he straightened up. Please don't do that, Shikaku asked. The other clan heads and civilian representative chuckled at the scene except for Hiyashi. The black-haired white-eyed man used the sleeves of his kimono to hide the small smile as he let loose small coughs that were barely audible. The door to the room opened and Tsunade along with Homura and Kaharu behind her. They sat down in the remaining chairs available. I understand it's late and we all want to go back to our beds, so I'll make things quick. Earlier, Mito came to wake me up. She had in her hands a scroll that detailed a resurrection jutsu. As she had expected, most of them jumped from their seats as they shouted, "What?" The only one in their seat was a man in a long coat with sunglasses despite it being indoors at night. Expected that someone would try to create and perform a resurrection jutsu. Ever since the Nidaime Hokage created the Edo Tensei, other villages had tried similar techniques, with all of them failing to perform even a fraction of what Edo Tensei could do before it was banned by universal agreement. So why should this even be cause of concern? Tsunade stared into Shibi's eyes, because the one who created it was Kushina. Shibi raised an eyebrow yet still kept his cool. I retract my earlier statement, this is a cause for concern. Kushina was one of the few detergents against other villages attacking Konoha due to her chakra chain's ability to suppress the Jinchuriki and Biju. No one knows if that ability could be used against normal shinobi, since she was usually deployed against the Jinchuriki since they're considered weapons of mass destruction. That doesn't even hit the nail. I thought your dad cleared Kushina in a psych eval, Inochi. Sume asked Inochi. He did, she managed to pass, with some trouble due to the grief affecting her performance but nothing too serious. Inochi replied. It's not Inaz's fault. I also placed Anbu to watch her and they all reply that she was as fine as a grief-stricken mother could be. Tsunade responded, defending the Yamanaka. As of right now, Kushina is locked in cell 666 of Konoha's mental asylum with multiple chakra restriction seals placed away from her sight. In 2 days, Kushina will be executed due to breaking multiple laws not limiting to multiple counts of treason, unauthorized use of kinjutsu, illegal human experimentation to name but a few. Homura and Kotaru stood up from their seats. Excuse Hokage-sama, but don't you think that's a bit excessive? Homura stated, indeed, to execute a fine Konoha shinobi just because they're still in grief. What would the rest of the world say about us? Tsunade growled, and what you two crones do? Give her a trial, there is a reason why we have a justice system in the first place, Hokage-sama. Homura replied. If found guilty, put her in prison with multiple chakra seals to seal her chakra up. We cannot allow the yin half of the Kyuubi to escape from its prison. While the rest of the world believed the Kyuubi died on October 10. Most of the cage knew that it was sealed up. But what is known only to the council and elders was that the Sandaime Hokage and Danzo Shimura sealed the yin half in Kushina and the yang half in Mito with leftovers for Naruto. As Kushina was a Jinchuriki for well over a decade, she needed a source of the Biju's chakra to survive. It was unknown if Mito and Naruto needed one too, since a Jinchuriki had never given birth before, usually dying in the line of duty. Sarutobi and Danzo sealed the yang half into Mito due to the well-known fact that Kunoichi had less chakra but better control over it. Since Naruto was guaranteed to have a large chakra source due to his heritage, the two decided to seal the yang half into Mito. Which is why I'm giving 2 days. So we can sleep on it, and if you have a better option that will work, bring it up during tomorrow's meeting. Dismissed. The council had then left to return to their own beds. However, an Anbu agent that worked for a certain snake decided to inform his master. Room 666. Konoha's mental asylum 4 hours after meeting. The Konoha's mental asylum was created after the First Shinobi World War, where many shinobi, often genin, were traumatized. It also serves as an area where shinobi would get help for their mental needs. The head staffs would often be Yamanaka that refused to work in the intelligence department or field work. In room 666, Kushina was on a bed with a straitjacket on. In addition to it, chains were wrapped around her legs and a collar was wrapped around her neck and tied to a bedpost. Why, I was so close to Sochi and they just had to widen the gap between us. No matter, I will find him, even if I had to kill everyone in my path. Soon, we'll be together, perhaps go to the Uzi Shiogakure ruins and be together forever. Yes, just us, me and him. No, that man, and the bitch who is his daughter will get in the way. Yes, Kushina muttered before laughing insanely out loud. That would be, if Tsunade didn't intend to execute you. A voice from the door quieted Kushina. Kushina snarled at the image of Tsunade. I knew she would be in my path. I should have killed her back then along with everyone else. Except his daughter, she was still born of my blood. No matter, I will get out and find Sochi. The voice replied, what if we can make things easier for you? My master is interested in that resurrection jutsu you created. So here's the deal, we get you out, help you find your son and help with relocating the two of you to a place you desire. In return, you give us that jutsu and oversee it so that it can be successful. If the master isn't resurrected, the deal's off and you'll be the toy for our men to do with as they please. Kushina growled again at that last sentence. No one will use her body except for her Sochi. She'll get her vengeance later, but for now, she should focus on getting him back into her arms. Fine, get me out of here and you have a deal. Also, touch me and the deal's off before it even begins. The voice chuckled, of course, my master's dream of immortality comes first before any pleasure of the flesh. United A house may stand. A picture with the Namikaze family all in it together. In it Naruto and Mito had their arms around each other with wide grins on their faces as Minato and Kushina stood in the back with a smile on their faces as well. Divided a house may fall. Kushina was expertly killing all the staff and patients that were in the way with the tanto given to her by the middleman. Minato was mediating in a cell. His hair was longer with bangs covering his face. His chin had rough and untamed beard as his eyes widened due to his senses feeling something was wrong. Mito was sleeping in her room as the nightmares continued to press on. Images of Naruto haunted with the same question over and over. Naruto was running through Konoha's woods as he continued to run as long as his legs can go. The picture of the Namikaze family is now cracked with the faces hardly recognizable. It began to tilt and fall from the drawer it was on until it reached the floor. For the wheels of fate have begun to turn, and it will not stop until it reached its course. Kushina had to rub her arms a little to get the feeling in them back due to the Anbu putting on the chains so tight. Kushina cracked her neck, then looked at the middleman between her and the man's master. The middleman was wearing a black cloak big enough to hide his features, but Kushina could tell it was a man in his late teens to early 20s, and he was about 5 feet 8 inches. The middleman opened cloak to show a hand with an item in it. The item was about a 3 feet tanto with a foot for the hilt. The tanto didn't appear to be anything special other than the fact it was a Anbu standard equipment. Whoever he is, he's well connected in order to procure items that only Anbu can get in Konoha. Kushina thought. Anbu standard equipment is only for Anbu members only. To even get the materials to make one would be the equivalent of an S-ranked mission pay. To make it would cost 2 more, that's how expensive it was. You're going to have to fight your way out. Once you're out, head to the Forest of Death's tower. There, one of our men will lead to my master. The middleman instructed her. Your master does know that without Naru-chan, he doesn't get it right? Kushina had to ask, hinting that without her baby, whoever the guy is, wouldn't get the resurrection just you she created without her baby in her hands. Which is why we have been watching him ever since he left Konoha's walls. You'll have your son, we'll get the jutsu, everyone wins. The cloak individual simply stated before disappearing into the shadows. Kushina stared at where the individual made his disappearance before exiting her cell. The hallway was brightly lit, blindly her a bit. As soon as she was used to the light, she checked to see if she could use her chakra again. Apparently they didn't believe she would be able to get out of her cell. TCH, they call themselves the best of the best, what lies they spout to feel good. As Kushina crept through the hallways that make up the asylum, she spotted employees and guards. Deciding to leave a farewell present to the ones who widened the gap to her Sochi, she had killed them all with an expert thrust into their hearts. The poor workers didn't even realize they were dead before they hit the ground. As Kushina closed in on the exit door, it opened, showing Inos and 2 other people. Forced to act quickly, Kushina once again thrusted her blood-stained tanto in one of the people entering. She then pulled out and sliced the other in a pivot that turned her 360. As she finished her pivot, Kushina flipped the blade so she was holding it reverse style. With the blade in reverse grip, Kushina intended to stab Inos through the head. She didn't expect him to use one hand to block and the other to grip her other forearm. Kushina, I expected you to try and escape, but I didn't believe you would make it this far. How did you even do it? Inos started the conversation. Never underestimate the power of a mother's love, Inos. As a parent yourself, you should know this. Kushina replied. You're right about that, Kushina, but you made a very simple mistake. Inos chastised Kushina as he struggled against to maintain the standoff between the two. No matter how strong a ninja may be, they always lose to time and death. Like many other Yamanakas that went into the shinobi military career, Inos worked as a member of the Intelligence and Torture Division. As such, he didn't train his body beyond the exercises that were taught in the Shinobi Academy. Add that to the fact he was nearly in his 60s with a poor diet made it a miracle that he hadn't lost yet to the younger and physically stronger women in front of him. Oh, and what's that? Kushina questioned. I have to only keep you here. Inos started to gather his chakra to pulse, calling for help while keeping a set amount that was being poured into his muscles to keep the clearly insane woman in the standstill. But just as he pulsed, he felt something pierce his heart. Inos looked down to see something had indeed pierced his heart, and it was connected to Kushina. You're right, or maybe I just wanted to play with you for a bit, but then you had to go and be sneaky calling for help. Kushina smiled. Goodbye and good night, Inos. The smile on Kushina was the last Inos ever saw before the everlasting darkness took his sight. Forest of Death. Kushina was finally at the Forest of Death. It had a foreboding feeling which caused many genins who took the Chunin exams to literally piss their pants. Kushina had a faint smile as she remembered one time when she was an examiner of the second test. Akumo Genin literally messed his pants when he got within 10 feet of the front entrance. The good old days when things didn't seem so complicated. She then shook her head trying to clear her mind. I have to stay focused on the prize, Kushina thought. The gate to the forest groaned before opening. Seeing this, Kushina decided to walk through it. Once she was through, the gate closed, leaving Kushina inside the gate. Rustling could be heard in the bushes as Kushina turned her head. Walking out of the bushes, a woman with a blank mask with the number 315 on it. The woman was wearing standard Black Ops Anbu armor. Kushina Uzumaki Dono, follow me, the woman stated in a monotone voice. Both walked for a while before the Anbu woman motioned for Kushina to stop. She then kneeled down and grabbed a rock that appeared of no importance. In fact, you wouldn't know it was actually a lever to have a door opened showing stairs leading underground. The Anbu woman led Kushina down the stairs as the door began to close without a single trace of anyone there. The two women's journey ended when they reached an underground cavern that had multiple rooms and bridges built at every sub-level. Kushina was amazed that a huge cavern was underneath Konoha and no one knew it was even there. Wait, that was wrong. Majority of Konoha didn't even have the slightest inkling what was underneath them. I supposed you like it then? A voice questioned. Kushina turned around to see it was somebody she never expected. It was Orochimaru the Snake Sannin. The man didn't look a day over 25, he still had black hair that reached his waist. Pale skin with yellow slit eyes that looked as if it took great amusement at your existence. Kushina should have known, Orochimaru was the only one in this era still seeking for immortality. Where is Naruto then? Kushina asked. She had to somehow get her Sochi away from him. There were rumors of what he did to young boys like Naruto and she will not let anyone defile her Sochi. If he even touch her baby, she'll make him pay dearly for it. Perhaps as a eunuch servant for, as much as it disgusted her for having some semblance for her previous life with that man, she loved to be pampered as if she was royalty. Oh, the boy is still running from what my spies have told me. I figured you would want to capture him yourself. I know all about those nasty rumors about me and young boys. I don't want to ruin the closest chance I have to fulfilling my dreams. Orochimaru sweetly told her, let's go get my Sochi first before you can have your jutsu. Kushina subtly warned Orochimaru that if he tried any funny moves, he wouldn't get any jutsu from her. Of that, we agree. Orochimaru smiled. It was like a snake who appeared to be weak but really had its fang at your neck. Follow me, he beckoned. Kushina started to walk behind him but stopped. Seeing this, Orochimaru turned around. Something wrong? Orochimaru asked. Do you have anyone you don't need? Kushina answered with her own question. Orochimaru's interest in the question had him lift up his eyebrows. Why's that? Konoha's forest, far far away. The naked Naruto was resting at one of the many trees that the Konoha forest had. As he was catching his breath, he began to replay the incident that cost him his clothes and the severe pounding in his head. He can hardly believe that 3 years had passed as he died on his birthday. His thoughts turned back to his last days in his rooms as he began to rethink the entire situation over again. From the memories that were on torture and what to expect if captured, it seemed that the thoughts he was thinking on his last day was due to sleep deprivation as well as hunger and thirst. It created a delusion that everyone was in on it, it being the locked behind the door until he died. Naruto couldn't even remember why he thought everyone was in on that. As he began to dig deeper into the memories, it seemed that his father, no, he does not deserve to be called that after what he did, was arrested according to the charter. His sister, Mito, seemed to be doing a good job despite all the heat she was getting. It was hard to decide what to do with her. On one side, he wanted to punish her for what she did and what she put him through. On the other, he wanted to forgive her as she was only a child who didn't know of the consequences of what she did. It was hard to decide what to do, so he decided to do both. From this day forward, they were no longer siblings but complete strangers to one another. It was a fitting punishment since he had a second chance at life. Naruto's stomach growled, forcing Naruto out of his memory as a guide. He began to hunt for fruits to eat. While he wanted meat, he had to make do until he reached someplace more safe. Seeing apples in the tree where he sat, Naruto tried to use the tree walking method to climb. Since it was a shinobi technique that he learned from his consuming, and it was his dream to be shinobi, of course he was going to use it. It was like walking a kid into a candy store and tell him not to eat when he's all alone in there. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't manipulate his chakra into his feet. Thinking that maybe it was due to his chakra hadn't been unlocked yet. He was 2 years too young to safely unlock it when he had died. So Naruto sat down in the lotus position. He meditated to find his chakra, but the strangest thing happened. No traces of the energy exist within his body. Was it because he was dead, or was the jutsu that his mother created incomplete somehow? Naruto's thoughts turned back to his mother. She was another hard one to decide what to do. While she wasn't the one to had a hand in his death, she still indirectly caused it by not checking up on him. It was so hard to make a decision because she tried to revive him. He decided to wait and think on it later. Searching for berries, Naruto managed to find some near the resting area he was previously at. As he ate them, he spited them back out. They had tasted truly disgusting. It was as if someone had just given him spoiled food. How did he know what spoiled food tastes like? It was a stupid bet between Mito and him. As he wiped his face, Naruto wondered what could he eat to stop the noise his stomach was making. Suddenly, he could smell an aroma that made him drool. The smell was so irresistible that Naruto moved forward by taking small steps before sprinting like an Akamichi man on a buffet course. He moved through bushes and past trees that obscure his view before he reached a clearing. Naruto stopped as he took sight in what was in front of him. A corpse, freshly killed, was in the middle of the clearing. The throat was slashed as blood dripped from the wound. Naruto stared at the corpse with a mixture of fascination and horror. He never ate the flesh of a human being, and yet the call for him to devour it was too strong. His feet started to move with a slow pace, foot after foot. He tried so hard to stop it, to turn around and run, but he couldn't. As he reached the corpse, he kneeled down shakily, and with his heart pounding so fast he thought he would die again, he ate the flesh of his first corpse. The blood was heavenly. The flesh tasted better than the beef from the beef ramen his mother would make for lunch 2 or 3 times a week. Slowly, his mind began to turn off as he enjoyed eating it. It was as if someone placed all his favorites combined into one meal combined with a drink. As he finished his meal, Naruto stared at his blood-soaked hands. He then stared at the skeleton of his meal. "I really am a monster," Naruto said to himself before crying. "You'll never be a monster, Naru-chan. You're my dear Sochi." A voice could be heard as some rustling from the bushes as Kushina stepped out. Kushina, despite being in her 30s, was looking in her 20s. She was wearing a bloody white shirt with pants that went down to her knees. Her long crimson hair that reached her upper back was tied into a single ponytail in the middle of her body. But that wasn't what Naruto was looking at. He was looking at his mother's face. She was sporting a wide grin that had a foreboding feeling to him. Her eyes held an intense concentration that had frozen him to the spot. Kushina, on the other hand, had kneeled down with her arms spread wide. "Come to Kasan, Naruto." That moment was all Naruto needed to turn tail and run. But as he did so, chakra chains split the ground as they wrapped around him. Kushina got up from her position and walked towards Naruto, who continued to struggle out of the chains. Tisk, tisk. Naru-chan's being a naughty boy for trying to run away from Kasan. Kushina chastised Naruto while wagging her index finger back and forth in front of Naruto's face. "But don't worry, Naru-chan, Kasan will take good care for you," Kushina promised before kanji appeared on her chain that forced Naruto to fall asleep during his struggle. Kushina placed Naruto on one of knees as she ruffled his red hair. It was her second greatest achievement aside from resurrecting Naruto, to change his looks to look more like her. It was a "fuck you" to her former husband that dared to abuse her child. If he wouldn't appreciate what she had given him, it was in her right to take it away. Add in the fact that she was protecting her baby from his sperm donor, and his lackeys made her in the right. Orochimaru appeared alone. His pale skin brightened the surrounding area around him. He smiled a snake's smile and asked, "I see you have him, then?" Kushina nodded. "Naru-chan's all mine now. I know what you want and I'll give it to you soon. And Uzumaki never breaks a promise made. Even if it's with slime like you. It doesn't have to end like this, you know. Sooner or later, Konoha will come after you and your son," Orochimaru stated. "And just what are you proposing?" Kushina had to be really careful now. She didn't want her son gone from her hands and sight after finally finding him again. "We work together as partners, together with science and chakra. We can make the best soldiers to obey our every command. I'm also planning a complete destruction of Konoha. It would go faster with your help. Orochimaru explained with a hand out, expecting the redhead mother to agree with him and take it. It would also keep the woman in his sights as he worked his magic to dominate the both of them as his mindless pawns, as he will rule the nations as its one true god. Kushina said nothing as she continued to ruffle Naruto's hair. You're right when you said Konoha would come after us, Kushina began. I supposed I can work with you. I'll start with perform the resurrection jutsu for you. There's no need, just give me a scroll. Orochimaru counter-offered. He'd only trust a select few to even be near his labs, much less him. Oh, but I insist. Kushina smiled widely as she looked at Orochimaru, causing him to flinch upon her sight. Her sclera was now pitch black as her irises was now golden with the pupils a red color. It was an unholy sight to the science-loving man who was never religious to begin with, especially with that log religion that used to spread before the Uchiha Shisui and Makoto put an end to it by mastering the Kawurami no Jutsu to the point of being able to replace with the air molecules itself, causing the former believers to doubt the power of the log, as the priests say. Orochimaru's thoughts were gone as pain entered his nervous system around his heart. He looked down to see a tentacle that was connected to Kushina had pierced his heart. I thought Uzumaki's didn't break their promises. He questioned as he spitted out blood. Kushina chuckled darkly. We do, but I'm just fulfilling it in a way to suit my needs. You'll have your resurrection, but as my pawn. A cocoon of dark unknown matter surrounded Orochimaru that later opened up, showing he was fine. However, he was kneeling in front of Kushina with his head low. What is your command, Kushina-sama? Orochimaru asked. Laughing a dark laugh, Kushina threw back her head. She now had a Sannin under her command with a hidden base with many soldiers underneath the target of her wrath. Better yet, she had her darling Sochi back in her arms. Things could only be better if her husband dies soon. Oh well, she would start by taking what he held precious first. Then only then, can he finally die. Tsunade was not a happy woman today. First, she woke up late at night due to the mess with Kushina and the cemetery where she lost 6 good Anbu members. 2 of which their bodies haven't been recovered. Then, there's the asylum incident where she also lost 16 employees and guards. 17 if you included Ino's, whose body disappeared, similar to Falcon and Dog. All because of one incident drove a mother insane. Tsunade would have left Konoha if it wasn't for the fact that Mito was under her custody due to the law and her position as Hokage. So here she was now, in one of the visitors' room at Konoha's Maximium prison to speak with a certain someone about current events and a possible parole. She was sitting in a room with 2 4-man squads of Anbu along with a 6-inch thick mirror along with desks and chairs which a prisoner will talk from the other side, made possible by communication seals. The other side's door had opened and the prisoner she had come to speak had just walked in with guards surrounding him in a diamond formation. When Tsunade saw the prisoner, she couldn't believe how far he had fallen. The prisoner's blonde hair was mid-waist length and was smooth and straight compared to when it was short and spiky. The hair covered the eyes, making it a wonder how the prisoner could even see where to go. The chin was covered in a full rough beard that only a pair of lips can see. He was wearing standard prisoner clothes that had seals woven into it to stop him from utilizing jutsu. When he had sat down, Tsunade had to ask, "How have you been doing, Minato?" Minato Namikaze, ex-Hokage, had to chuckle slightly at the question. How I've been doing? Let's see here. I killed my only son, was arrested for it. Kushina doesn't come to visit me because of that, and I lost custody of my only living child. How do you think I'm doing? Tsunade took a deep breath. Well, Mito may not be the only one alive. If one could see underneath the bangs which covered Minato's eyes, they would see them widening. How? Tsunade then sighed before she ordered all guards to leave the room, which they did, although with some resistance. After they had left, Tsunade continued her speech. Last night, I was waken up by Mito, who entered into Naruto's room. Seeing Minato's head go down slightly, she could feel the self-loathing and hatred the man had for himself. What's done is done. You had to move past it, Minato. Easy for you to say, you didn't kill him. Minato whispered almost silently that Tsunade couldn't hear as he still had his head lowered down in shame. Tsunade rubbed her forehead. Anyway, on it were details for a resurrection jutsu. Please don't tell me what I think is going to happen, begged Minato as he pressed his body against the window which separated him from the Hokage. Sure, he killed his son, but at the very least he should have been living in peace in the afterlife. Naruto was innocent of any sin. I'm afraid it's so. Kushina intended to resurrect Naruto. We caught her in the act and had captured her, but she escaped. Naruto, on the other hand, we don't know what happened to him. Tsunade explained. Minato didn't know what to do. On one hand, he had a chance to make things right. On the other, Naruto could easily attack him and he wouldn't do a single thing to harm him. Why are you telling me this? Kushina was one of our best shinobi. Without her, the village is considerably weaker. Not only that, but who's to say she won't take revenge on you and Mito? I'm no psychiatrist, but I can safely say she's a yandere for Naruto. I'm just killing two birds with one stone by letting you know. Suede replied. Now, onto some other things such as your parole. Minato closed his eyes. How long? Soon, Minato. You'll see Mito again, I promise. Tsunade said. As Tsunade began to leave the room, she stopped as Minato said his last piece. I won't kill Kushina or Naruto, Tsunade. In fact, I'll stand as they kill and send me to the Shinigami's stomach if we ever meet. Tsunade didn't turn around and instead just walked out of the room. Mito, Konoha Shinobi Academy, lunchtime. Bam! Kiba Inuzuka flew a few feet from the force of the punch that Mito gave. Mito herself was in an extended punch stance with a furious gaze upon the fallen Inuzuka. Say it again, dog breath, I dare you. Kiba stood back up, wiping the blood off his mouth with his hand. Your mother is a traitor and your father is a pup slayer. Hearing Kiba insult her parents again, Mito's hair split off into 9 tails, and were waving around as a fiery red flame auras around her. Her eyes were now glowing a menacing red that promised pain and castration for the loudmouth academy student. As Mito stood one step after another, Kiba followed with one step back until he couldn't anymore. I'm so going to die. Kiba thought as Mito finally overshadowed him. As Kiba cowered and assumed the fetal position as Mito's face was in an impasse as she raised one of her foot. As she was going to bring it down on Kiba's balls in feminine fury, a hand grabbed Mito's foot. Mito was surprised as the action before looking up to see Iruka Umino's face. The Chunin's instructor's face was full of concern at one of his students' temper. He had never seen Mito this upset before. Sure, she was more of social outcast with few friends, but she had never acted this aggressively before. It had to have been the news that Kushina had defected from Konoha, making Mito even more of an outcast. I can't let your fellow students as badly as you're going to make it. Iruka's voice was stern as he chastised Mito. HMPH, fine. You hear that, dog sweat? You'll live for now, but insult my Ka and Tusan again and we'll see if you can even have children after I'm done with you. Mito stated angrily as she walked off. What are you all looking at? Mito screamed at the children who formed a crowd around the incident, who then scattered after being called on. Sometime later, as the Shinobi Academy ended, Mito walked back home by herself. Ino had begun her fangirl phase as the Yamanaka had started to stalk the Uchiha boy, which caused friction between the two friends as Ino thought Mito had a crush on Sasuke too. Hinata was back at her clan compound training in the Jukin, gentle fist, with her father and working on getting past her shy nature. As Mito walked through the gate, she began to see images from her earlier childhood. From when the family ate together with ramen as the main dish, to when Naruto and her wrestled with each other to determine who was the older sibling since Kushina wouldn't tell who was first to born into the world. A small breeze blowed into Mito's face as a dead flower smacked her face before falling down onto the ground. Mito looked down at the flower before she fell onto her knees with tears flowing freely from her face. One single action had caused things to deteriorate so fast that she could no longer trust anyone other than Tsunade Ba-chan, Shizune-chan, Ero Sennin when he comes visit time to time, and Tusan. It was even worse when the entire mess had started because of her action. Tadaima, Mito whispered to herself before waiting to hear the welcoming reply. When it didn't come, she began to wail with all her emotions. Kushina. Hidden base under Konoha. Master bedroom. In the master's bedroom, a single large bed with two individuals on it. Both of them were naked as they were born with bed sheets being the only thing that covered their modesty. A single movement from one of the individuals caused the bedsheets to lower, showing that Kushina was the one to move as she put one of her palms on her cheeks to elevate her head as the other hand traced Naruto's jawline. "This is how things should be, my beloved Sochi is with me once more," Kushina thought as she then rubbed Naruto's whisker-marked cheek, unintentional, making the boy purr as he snuggled closer to the hand while still asleep, causing Kushina to yell, "Kawaii," in her head. Kushina brought her face closer to Naruto's own before closing her eyes as she knock knock. Kushina's eyes opened and began to twitch at the interruption before getting out of bed. Unknown matter crept along her skin before a blood-red kimono materialized on her. As she walked and opened the door slightly, she could see it was Orochimaru who had interrupted her. "Make it quick, you're interrupting my snuggle time," Kushina snapped. Orochimaru could see Kushina was not in the mood, so he answered quickly. "Forgive me, Kushina-sama, but I must question. Why can't I feel my chakra?" Kushina growled slightly. Just because of that he dared interrupted her. "Wait right here," Kushina said before slamming the door in Orochimaru's face. A few minutes later, Kushina opened the door again before thrusting a scroll into Orochimaru's hands. "Take this, leave me alone." Kushina slammed the door once more before turning around to see as Naruto was waking up. Orochimaru. As Orochimaru walking through the hallways, he was reading the scroll that Kushina-sama had given him. "If you are reading this, then you are Naru-chan or someone who I have brought back to you are not Naru-chan, then skip the next few paragraphs or I'll kill you. I gave you life so I can take it away. After a few paragraphs or so. Now if you are someone I brought back to life, then you are classified as a ghoul. Ghouls compared to evolved, which there will only be two, are fundamentally weaker and have less abilities than the evolved. They also cannot eat anything other than human flesh. I'm trying to work on improving it, so to speak, but the Guru Fukatsu no Jutsu, Ghoul Resurrection Jutsu, is having some difficulties on it. On the plus side, ghouls mature at a faster rate, which allows the being to utilize chakra again after 1 year compared to the 3-year wait time of the evolved. It is unknown if there are any other benefits due to only one had survived the jutsu at the moment of me writing this. Now the known abilities of ghouls are. Now I see why I can't perform jutsu. Well, time to try some of these abilities then. Perhaps I'll find some new abilities. Orochimaru thought as he then changed direction in order to go to the training grounds. Naruto. As Naruto opened his groggy eyes, he soon rubbed them and looked up to see that he was in a room. The traumatic experience forced Naruto to hyperventilate as he soon got up from the bed and began searching for an exit. He was so into it that he didn't see a pair of arms from behind grabbed into a hug. Naruto soon slowed his breath and turned around to see Kushina. "It's okay, I'm here for you now, my beloved Sochi," Kushina whispered into his ear as one of her hands soon ruffled Naruto's hair. Naruto soon hugged Kushina and pressed his head into her chest as he sobbed. "It was just a dream," he mumbled repeatedly. Kushina just kept Naruto in her arms as she petted Naruto's red hair. She kept whispering, "It's all right, you're safe now." Outpost of the Kumo traditionalists. The hidden base of Kumo rebel traditionalists was literally on fire as countless dead bodies was stacked in a pile. A person covered in a cloak in such a way that no distinctions of gender, age, or anything that really marks who is wearing the cloak. This person was moved enough to show a hand that was holding another hand. He or she then took a bite from the forearm, savoring the taste. She then sucked the area for blood that he or she ate from. "So loud," the figure said after swallowing her drink. A shinobi with the /Kumo Hite 8 had showed up. The man's face was so generic that the cloak person probably won't remember after killing him. The man had a smug expression on his face. Clearly he thought he was to kill the cloak person. So angry. The cloak person continued, "Listen, demon, I the powerful." The man didn't get to finish before a tendril that appeared from the cloak pierced the man before bringing the corpse over and placed it on the pile after the cloak person hopped off. So dead. The cloak person finished before using a storage scroll to place the corpses in stasis. Afterwards, the person walked off in a direction. Konoha. Minato Namikaze was in a straight jacket with multiple chakra restriction seals on it. The man's appearance was disheveled as if he had lived in the wilderness. In front of the man were multiple shinobi and the 3 supreme judges. Minato Namikaze, ex-Hokage of Konoha. You have now been granted the chance for parole due to your good behavior. Do you accept? One of the judges asked. I accept, Minato responded monotonously with a dull look in his eye. Another judge then said, very well, your parole officer has been decided. It will be hidden base. It was just a dream. Naruto repeatedly stated as he cried into Kushina's arms. Kushina on the other hand was just ruffled Naruto's head while repeating, it's okay. Naruto opened his eyes and his eyes were looking at a mirror. Inside the mirror, Naruto saw a red-headed boy with purple eyes. The same one that Falcon and Dog were chasing before their deaths. It was him, but that means it's true, Naruto mumbled. Kushina stopped ruffling as she arched her back a little to look at her son. What's wrong, Naruto? Naruto pushed Kushina off him with Kushina already surprised at the amount of strength that Naruto shouldn't have yet have. Using the surprise moment, Naruto then rushed out of the door. Kushina, who had recovered, rushed out of the door immediately to have her precious in her hands once more. Once Kushina had opened the door, she could see Naruto had already reached the end of the hallway, was turning in a different direction. Running in order to catch up, Kushina couldn't help but smile at the progress that Naruto had already made by himself. She could just imagine him all big and strong yet keep a lean figure that would make them envy of all other men and the wet dream of women. When the thought had passed, Kushina had scowled, no one would be taken the innocence of her baby. He was hers, all hers. The thoughts had distracted Kushina that she didn't realize that she was already at the end of the hallway and hit the wall. Due to her increased strength, she just went through it with a strange feeling of shouting, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. Kushina tilted her head, the hell's a Juggernaut? She then looked around and saw at one of the training rooms which was occupied by Orochimaru, who was testing the tendril appendage that was standard for every ghoul and evolved. Orochimaru looked to see it was his missed boss lady. The last time he had referred her as mistress left him traumatized that he could no longer look at spoons without clenching his bottom in imaginary fear. Kushina-sama, do you need anything? Orochimaru asked. Ever since the young master was recovered from Konoha after his return to the world, she stayed in her room watching over him as if it was all a dream, and she would wake up and discover that it was all just a dream. Put the base on lockdown, Naru-chan is running and I must have him. He could be hurt, dying, or in the hands of a sick-in-the-head MILF where he would used as a slave and lose everything that made him him. Kushina also began running. It was a good thing she took the chance to absorb an Inuzuka clan member when she had the chance. Naruto dodged one of the Orochimaru's experiment strikes as the former human pounced once more. Naruto sidestepped before grabbing the beast and slammed it down into the ground hard enough to create a small crater. Kushina and Orochimaru were watching from a podium, with each haven't aged a single bit in the past 3 years. The redhead was watching with trepidation as she chewed her nails as she watched him fight. While she wanted to keep him forever in her grasp, she knew that there was a chance that she maybe not be there when her enemies to sick pedophiles trying to kidnap her precious Sochi. When she saw him defeat the Chimera, she was so happy that he did it without being hurt. The creature had been able to defeat Junin from all 5 shinobi villages without much difficulty. She looked at Naruto and couldn't help but smile at his facial changes. Naruto was shirtless, allowing her to eye his lean body build. Despite his body build, she knew her Sochi could toss a fully grown adult over 100 yards if he so chose to. Kushina could see that Naruto was looking at her and he smiled, making her heart beat faster. Her face heated up as she thought, maybe, Sochi's the one. Kushina stood up, congratulations, Sochi. You've gotten stronger. That night, as Naruto slept together in the same bed with his mother and the nude. Naruto had woken up late at night, and used the Kawarimi no Jutsu, body replacement jutsu, with an object that he prepared for the past 2 years. Naruto took another look at his mother as she cuddled and drooled on what he had used to replace him. It was hard to believe that this woman destroyed countless laws of man and nature just to bring him back. He loved his mother, and even more so since he knew how much trouble she went through to bring him back, as well as teaching how to use his new abilities. But she was suffocating him. He wanted to explore the world and see new and different things in the world instead of the walls of the base every day of the past 3 years. Kushina. When Kushina had woken up, she expected her son to be there in her arms. As she rubbed her eyes, she saw an object where her beloved Sochi should be. As she inspected it closer, she saw a letter. Opening it, it read, Ka-san, thank you for teaching how to control my powers. I'm going to explore the nations, okay? Love, Naruto. When she finished, anger was coursing through her veins. How could her Sochi leave her all alone? It seems she needed to discipline so he would never do this again in the future. She dressed herself and exited the room to meet her two ghouls. The three of them had a Ruli son to find. 2 years later, Konoha Shinobi Academy. 5 years had passed since Kushina's defection and Minato's release from prison. Mito's class was waiting for the Genin graduation test, to which if they pass, they finally get to become Konoha Shinobi. Mito was sitting next to Sasuke Uchiha, the class heartthrob. Both him and her had an agreement which both of them would sit together to drive the fanboys, girls away from them. It was an agreement that helped them tolerate each other. Iruka and Mizuki, the instructors of this class, had just came in and stood in front of the class. Class, as you know, today's the day the Genin graduation test begins. Iruka started with class cheering except Hinata, who was shy, Mito, who didn't believe in cheering since she still mourns the fact that Naruto wasn't here to join with her, and Sasuke, who doesn't cheer at all. Crack a contempt smile. You bet, but never a cheer and smile warmly. I know, I was just like you when I was your age. Iruka tried to settle them down. Now, then Ayasaki Megami. A camp in the middle of nowhere was destroyed. Bodies littered the floor, half chewed, and many of the faces stiff in the screams and terror. Blood ran freely and congregated into one bloody pool. 3 figures could be seen slurping the blood as they crouch on their hind legs. 2 figures stepped out from the distance, revealing Orochimaru and the person in the cloak. Orochimaru was amused at the scene as he turned his head to face his partner. A bloody act, is it not? But then again, you would know all about it, wouldn't you agree? The figure snaked his or her hand forward, grabbing Orochimaru by the throat. A singular Sharingan eye was shown through the hood as the person lifted Orochimaru into the air. Do not mock me or I will show you why I was once feared, similar to Kushina-sama back in the Third Shinobi World War. The person's voice was very feminine, making it a distinct possibility the person was a female. Orochimaru chuckled. Chill, I was making a joke. No need to get your panties in a twist. Looking at the 3 figures again, he smiled. Anyways, the experiment was a success, so let's head back. A black swirling void appeared near the 2 before it disappeared. The 2 knew it was Toby, the first ghoul, who was here for only one reason. Kushina-sama must have had orders for all of them. The man had short, spiky black hair and a swirling mask with a single right eye hole showing the Sharingan eye. Toby stared at them with his single eye. I'm here to bring you 2 and those beasts back to base. Let's hurry before my appointment with Nagato passes. Orochimaru clicked his tongue and the 3 figures looked up before they walked hunched back and on their knuckles over to the 3 subordinates, and Toby teleported back to base. Konoha Shinobi Academy. Today was finally the day where all the respective students will be put into squads of 3. Many of the children were jollying around, with the boys bragging on how they would save princesses and save the world, and the girls dreaming on how they would find their destined one. In the corner were 2 children not joining in the celebrations. One of the children were a male with a black hair that resembles a certain animal's rear end and cold onyx eyes as he stared at them, disdain eyes. The other child was a female with a short shoulder-length red hair, wearing a yellow shirt and pants with the Uzumaki symbol on her back and on a sash tied on her waist. The 2 children were Sasuke Uchiha and Mito Namikaze. The door opened and Iruka Amino entered the room with a clipboard. He stood in front of the class and waited for the children to quiet down. When it didn't happen in a few minutes, he grew a tick mark and activated his Okina Atama no Jutsu, Big Head Jutsu, and yelled, "All right maggots, settle down." The children did so and Iruka gave them the stink eye before continuing. So everyone here has passed the graduation. The children gave a cheer. Now, I'm going to call out some names. That means you are going to be a squad along with 2 Jonins as your sensei. 1 full-ranked Jonin and a special Jonin. As much as it would be lovely to hear all the teams be announced, it was only Squad 8 and 9 that was most important. Team 8 will be Hinata Hyuga, Yakumo Kurama and Mito Namikaze. Your sensei is Kurenai Yuhi and Minato Namikaze. Iruka continued. Team 9 will be Uchiha Sasuke, Shino Aburame and Kiba Inuzuka. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki and Anko Mitarashi, and Saku Uchiha didn't care who was on his team as long as the ones who teach him are strong and will make him strong. Mito on the other hand was happy that she got her father to teach and her only friends since she no longer considered Ino one of her friends. Iruka, after reading off the squad roster, looked at the children. Let me give a piece of advice, just because you have the knowledge doesn't mean you get by in real life. It's a combination of both that will help you survive. The team's leaders then entered the room with each taking the team members. In Field 9, Kurenai and Minato were watching their new students. Kurenai was a beautiful woman in her 20s with wild hair that reached down to her back. She was also wearing a dress that resembles bandages. Minato on the other hand had his hair still shaggy through not as long as during his time in prison. He was the standard flak jacket with a yellow and orange color scheme. Kurenai was the one who started first. My name is Kurenai Yuhi, my likes are genjutsu and my friends. I dislike hypocrites and people who are traitors. My dream is to raise my own family one day. Minato went second. My name is Minato Namikaze, ex-Hokage. My likes are my family. My dislikes are some of my own actions and my goal is to meet my wife once again. Hinata Hyuga was the heir of the Hyuga clan. Thanks to Mito's influence, Hinata grew into a strong independent woman who was on the way to being able to remove the Kago no Tori no Juin, caged bird seal. The girl was wearing a white jacket with the zipper half-zipped showing a fishnet shirt. The girl answered clearly, my name is Hinata Hyuga. My likes are family and learning new taijutsu techniques. My dislikes are the Kago no Tori no Juin and those with sticks up their asses. Yakumo Kurama was a woman who had light brown hair and eyes. She was originally sealed just before Sarutobi's death and was later unsealed thanks to Minato Namikaze who took a look over at the seal used to bind her powers. My name is Yakumo Kurama and I like genjutsu and painting. I dislike bigots as well. Mito finished the conversation. My name is Mito Namikaze, I like ramen and my family. I dislike some of my decisions I made when I was younger and my dream is to find my mother and talk to her. Kurenai nodded. Now that we introduced ourselves, I have to say that you all are not yet truly genin. This set off a chain-off reaction as the three were angry about the announcement before Minato blew a whistle silencing them. Kurenai nodded in thanks. Now with that out of the way, I'll explain. The team leaders must give a test to the prospective genins. If they failed, they are sent back to the academy for more training. Now the test is simple. Find the object in the training field and while avoiding the guardians Minato had planted. If you have to fight in the open, keep it quick and simple. The more you fight in the open teaches the other guardians about your fighting style. Here's a radio headset, then ready, go. Kurenai screamed the last part as the three genin shunshined away into the trees. Forest. The trio hid together as they watched and waited for any signs of these guardians. Hinata asked her two teammates, anyone knows what these guardians look like? A rustle in the bushes making the trio quieted down as a wooden form of a dog with fuinjutsu seals on like tattoos started prowling around. The dog started sniffing around before making a yelp as it was destroyed with a Rasengan by Mito. The explosion alerted other guardians, along with Minato and Kurenai. Kurenai looked at Minato. Do you think they have a chance? Minato looked down at the ground before making a small smile. Mito is her mother's daughter. Hinata is a Hyuga and Yakumo has an ability to make genjutsu come to life. I'm sure they'll pass. As Team 9 ran, they were then overrun by creatures similar to the guardian Mito had just destroyed. As the Mito and Hinata fought off the guardians, Kurama had then thought off a technique which she's been thinking about and practiced for some time. Mito, Hinata, buy me for some time so I can just get out this mess. Mito and Hinata gave a nod as they hold off any of the guardians that tried to get past, but it grew more and more difficult as they began to learn. Eventually, Yakumo finished a painting which allowed her to teleport Team 9 to a different location just a few miles off. Team 9 was able to see that the guardians would look around and walked away from the location back to where they came from. Mito had the sudden realization, maybe they would know where the object is. Hinata and Yakumo nodded, with Basquiat no idea where to start. It was the best idea so far. So when they decided to stealthily follow the guardians, they came across a wooden castle that was similar to a castle that a wealthy person might have to show off their wealth they have. Hinata, being the person on the mark, used her Byakugan to scout the insides of the castle. I can see something in the middle that has a tag that actually says, object. I think that's what we have to get. Yakumo then wondered about how they were going to get inside while Mito came up with an idea. Yakumo, can you do whatever it was that you did? The Kurama heiress nodded. I think so, I can only do it twice more. Mito then came up with the plan. Yakumo will use the jutsu to bring me inside the castle with Hinata being the eyes. I'll get the object and Yakumo will teleport me out where we run. With their teamwork, they managed to actually get the object without raising the alarm. A significant achievement since this was their first time working together with the exception of Hinata and Mito since they were trained together. Team 8 Field Clearing. Kurenai looked at her students as she evaluated them. Excellent job finding the location, extracting the object and escaping without alert. However, we went easy on you this time so don't get overconfident. Minato nodded. Now, we'll begin with team exercises in the morning followed by individual training in order to counter your weaknesses and bolster your strengths with some D-ranked missions with the day ending with a spar 3-on-1 with the other sensei watching your moves. Namikaze Household. The day had ended and Team 9 had disbanded to go their homes. Mito and Minato Namikaze went back to their own home or rather Tsunade's home now. As they entered the home, they realized that Tsunade wasn't home as well as Shizune. Mito looked at her father. "Tu-san, do you want to?" She stopped as Minato just walked up the stairs without looking back at her. Mito looked at her father as he retreated from her. She knew he was only a shadow of his former self. The incident which destroyed their family still had effect to this day. She didn't know what to do but she knew she had to meet her mother in order to take the first steps to reconcile and patch the Namikaze family up as best as she can. 1 month time skip. So that's what they did for the entire month. D-ranked missions, training and sparring which helped increase their skills. At the end of the month, both Kurenai and Minato agree that Team 9 was ready for a C-ranked mission. So that's why the team was at the mission office where Team 8 and 9 were waiting for the approval of a mission. It turns out that Iruka Amino was the one who was handing out the missions at the moment until next year for the new blood be ready to join. Konoha's teacher does a rotation-based shift. A teacher is struck with a class until they graduate. Once they graduate, they worked for a year in the missions office until the next year has come. Iruka stared at his former students and then at the team leaders since he didn't trust them to be ready for a C-ranked mission. It seemed to the teacher that it was only last year since they were kids in his eyes. Iruka stated simply, "I don't think they are ready for a C-ranked mission." Anko Mitarashi was leaning forward as she showed off her cleavage. "Are you sure? 'Cause I'm sure the Gakis are more than ready, at least the ones on my team is." Kurenai gave a huff as she placed her hands on her hips. "And you don't think Minato or I are not enough to train our students?" Iruka denied this with a slight blush on his face. "No, I don't think so, but what I truly think it's still too early to allow their participation in C-ranked missions." Minato was the one who answered, "I think they are ready for a C-ranked." The mission giver was confused on what to do. In one hand, if it was the former Hokage then it was probably okay, but on the other it was his teacher's instinct to coddle his students. Iruka took a deep breath and agreed to the decision of the team leaders, but only if they took the mission together. When they agreed to the condition, Iruka opened the C-ranked mission folder and pulled a mission paper. "This is a C-ranked bodyguard mission, so I'll go call in the client." A few moments passed and an old man came in with a bottle of booze as he spotted the kids. "This is all my money can get me?" An emo kid, a puppy, a weird-looking kid, a slut, a sheltered princess and a tomboy. Said kids looked at the drunken man with killing intent, causing the man to stumble and look at the kids in fear. "All right. I may have wrote you kids off too soon, so I expect you kids to take me to Nami no Kuni." Kakashi, who was quiet until now as he was reading Icha, simply said, "I expect to meet each of you at the North Gate in 10 minutes, sayonara," and he shunshined with a cloud of smoke and leaves in his place. On the road, again. Don't mind the parenthesis, I couldn't help myself. The two teams began to leave Konohagakure no Sato for the beginning of their mission. As they walked, 2 piles of water were on the road which didn't faze Team 8 thanks to Minato and Kurenai's training. Team 9, on the other hand, had only Shino and Akamaru who knew but could never get his master to pay attention. The piles of water then splashed out, revealing 2 people dressed in cloaks with long spiky hair with chains on their right or left arms and attacked the old man who gave the information out that he was Tazuna and he was a bridge builder. Kakashi and Minato stopped them with minimal movement wasted and tied them up with ninja wire. Anko looked at the two people and remarked, "Hey, it's the demon brothers, aren't they worth about 3,000 ryo together?" Kakashi looked at Tazuna. "You have a lot of explaining together, Tazuna." While Anko decided to take them inside the woods to have some fun with the demon brothers while Tazuna explained about the situation with the Gato and Nami no Kuni. Now, any other Genin's team would have went back and dropped the mission, but not the team 8 or 9 Genins for reasons that were personal to them, be it for pride or moral. Tazuna was just thankful that the shinobi didn't drop the mission because he had lied. So, as the now in Nami no Kuni, the two teams were down an unpaved road in a foggy environment, but there wasn't a single incident besides the Demos brothers' attack. Tazuna opened the door and yelled inside, "Tsunami. I'm home." From the kitchen, a young woman in her 20s came out of the kitchen. The woman looked at Tazuna and the shinobi before giving a homely smile. "Welcome home, Two-san and bodyguards." She quickly gave a bow. "I hope you had an easy time getting here." A young annoying voice called out in a sneezy tone, "They're all going to die, Gramps." The shinobi looked to see that it was small boy with a fisherman's hat. "No one has the strength to take Gato out. We're all going to be exploited by the man until we die." The boy then walked up the stairs while yelling, "We're all going to die." Kiba was glaring at the kid. "How dare that brat thinks we're all going to die. We have Junins and special Junins so powerful that thugs will run in fear." Sasuke HMPHED. "A rich man is no match for the power of an Uchiha, especially when we have the power of the Sharingan." Tsunami looked at where the boy stood as she explained where the boy's current personality. Inari is just a boy who admired his father and lost him when he was executed by Gato. Since then, he's been this way. Mito glared in the direction of the Inari. How dare he acted this way because of just one incident? Her family was destroyed and she didn't know how to repair it. She left immediately for the woods outside and didn't look back. Minato went to go comfort his daughter, finally having enough courage to talk to her. Tsunami looked at the two leaving with a confused expression. "Now what is that all about?" Kakashi looked with a pained expression. "It's a long story." Forest. Minato grabbed his Masumi by the shoulder. "Mito, walk with me." Mito, in a daze, did so as they took a walk. "I'm sorry, Mito, for not actually being there when you needed me. I'm sorry for being so pathetic." Mito looked at her father. "It's not your fault, Two-san. If anything, it's mine. I started the mess that caused our family to break." Minato looked at the ocean that they had just passed. "It was both of our faults then. Let's make a promise right here. We'll find Kushina and bring her back to the way it used to be. It won't be the same without Naru." Mito remembered her brother and those cold dead eyes as the stare peered into her soul. Minato rubbed his Masumi's shoulder. "I know, Mito, but we can try. That's all we can do now. At least, Naruto is in a better place." Bullshit, and he knew it. Naruto was still out there and with someone who all there in the head. Hidden base in Nami no Kuni. Haku, the weapon of Zabuza-sama, was huffing and gasping for breath as she looked at the boy who just killed her master. They were just watching the Konoha shinobi who was there with the bridge builder and returned back to their base for the strategic planning when this boy who was her age just demolished Zabuza-sama. Haku made the hand signs for her hidden jutsu Makio Hyosho, secret jutsu demonic ice mirrors. And just as she was on the final hand sign was when the boy grabbed her by the hands and just threw her into a wall. As Haku struggled to get up, the boy stepped on her and put pressure into his foot. The boy tilted his head as he asked, "Why do you serve someone like Zabuza?" Haku glared as hard as she could at the boy. "He found me when I had nowhere to go. He is my master and that is all you need to know." The boy scratched his head as he thought before replying, "So, it's a case of hero worship? Because I've consumed a lot of people like that." Haku struggled to get out of the position she was in. "I was raised as a weapon and I failed to defend Zabuza-sama, but I will kill you." The boy then looked at Haku. "I guess I should give a little lesson. When I consumed someone, I get everything that makes them them. Skills, memories, you named it, I have it." The boy's eyes glowed. "I'm not cruel, so I'll give something. Zabuza didn't consider you his weapon. You were more the child he never had. I hope it means something." Haku looked up to see black tendrils pierced her pale white skin, and the woman known as Haku Yuki was no longer. The night just before the bridge was finished. Tsunami was just finishing making dinner for the shinobi and her family. The two boys, Kiba and Sasuke, seemed to be having a confrontation on who can eat the most. The girls seemed to be taking her time and the masked man seemed more concerned about the book in his hand. Inari was staring at his meal while looking at the shinobi. Didn't they know they were destined to die by the hands of Gato if they continued this path? Why? Why do you still fight? Don't you know it's useless? The redhead girl slammed her chopsticks down and grabbed Inari by the scarf. Do you know what it's like to know that your family is destroyed by your hand? That your actions killed your brother and drove your mother mad? Do you know what it feels like? Inari was scared at the violent injury the girl was giving off. No. Mito was now shaking Inari so hard, the poor boy swore that his brain was rattling. Well, I do. I saw my own brother's cold, lifeless eyes as they stared at me for the past 8 years. I see how my mother was driven insane, and do you know what the worst part was? I could have stopped it, stopped my mother for running and killing, and who knows what she's been doing. The emotional girl dropped the younger boy as she walked towards the door. I'm going for a late-night walk through the woods. Don't try to stop me, before slamming the door. Tsunami placed a hand near her mouth. That didn't really happen, did it? Minato closed his eyes and nodded. She placed so much of the blame on her when it should be me who carries it. It was me that killed Naruto, my son and Mito's brother. Minato opened his eyes, and she's not the only one here with such a story, but it's their choice if they wish to tell it or not. Inari was surprisingly remorseful. He never knew that other people had suffered similar or even harder lives. He then looked at the remaining shinobi respecting, trying to find out which ones had the stories. But even in his young age, he knew such stories were private and if they were willing to share. Mito. Stupid Gaki. Mito screamed as she crushed countless trees with the Rasengan. There was nothing to the feeling of crushing stuff with your fists when you're in an angry mood. Feeling her chakra running low, she tried to get back to the house only to fall over and fall asleep in the woods. When she finally woken up, she was wrapped in a blanket next to a guy that could pass off as her identical twin watching her with a fist on his chin. The boy smiled. You're awake. He was wearing a black shirt and shorts with pockets since his hips. On his shirt were the kanji, never forget. It was so simple that Mito wanted to inscribe that on her shirt along with her brother's name. Blushing slightly, Mito regained her composure as she went for her kunai in her hip pouch only to find them not there. The boy grinned as he threw her hip pouch and leg holsters. I didn't do anything to you while you were unconscious. I despise rape and kill any that I can get my hands on. Mito didn't understand why, but she felt at ease with his presence. Well, what are you doing here, then? The boy tilted his head sideways while keeping his grin. I was on my way to kill Gato when I saw you out in the open. Naturally, since a pretty girl like you shouldn't be out here all by her lonesome, especially when she's unconscious, so I consider it my civic duty to help you out. The boy stood up. Well, I should get going since you're awake now. As the boy turned around and walked away, Mito couldn't let the debt she owed him linger. What's your name? I want to know so I can pay you back. The boy stopped and without looking back, replied, Naruto Uzumaki, before he shunshin away from the thrown kunais. Mito was furious that this boy would dare use her brother's name to mock her. Couldn't they just stop and let his memory rest in peace? As she walked back to Tazuna's house, she didn't notice Naruto was standing on a tree branch just above her. Smirking, he whispered only to himself, still energetic as ever, Mito-san. Naruto. The second evolved was near the mansion of Gato. If his intelligence was correct, and it usually is since it came from the big guys he consumed, after having a feast on his subordinates and his own spy network, the last of the women that Gato had kidnapped and forced to serve, those with money or his thugs, were hidden somewhere in this very mansion. Naruto had let off a small laugh. The midget didn't even know that most of his illegal dealings were destroyed or altered by Naruto and placed with people Naruto could trust. That didn't mean that he wouldn't have a surprise secret visit to make sure they didn't let the power go to their heads. Many of those he consumed were once ordinary people before they became extraordinary. Naruto then shifted his body into one Suzuka Hirotora, an executive member that was stupid enough to fall for a simple seduction when he was in a female form. He walked over to the guards and yelled at them, "Wake up, you useless excuses for a shit stain." The front guards woke up and snapped to attention before one of them took a closer look at Naruto and realizing it was a member of the executive board. "I'm sorry sir, it won't happen again." Naruto then kicked the guard who was too slow to respond. "You see, punk, At least the other guy had apologizes, and what do? You just stand there gawking at me. Motioning for the other guy to come closer, he gave the order, call for everyone here, effective immediately. I want you all to give this son of a bitch the special treatment for disrespecting me. The guards widened their eyes. To have the special treatment was a fate worse than death for anyone, and not even the most cruelest of the thugs would use it without a justified reason. Sir, do you realize what you just ordered? Naruto gave the best glare he could give. Does it look like I care? Perhaps you should also join in then? The guard thug bowed before heading over to the alarm system and alerted everyone to a code black, meaning everyone was to come to the front gate, no exceptions. Naruto looked at those gathered. They didn't scare him. If anything, they were just cannon fodder. He spread his arm. People, we have come here today to witness someone getting the special treatment. This got them excited even if it was cruel, and that person is you all. A younger Naruto was sleeping in a forest clearing on a tree trunk as a young girl poked him with a stick. Naruto's reflexes grabbed the stick and had snaked his hand forward as he went for the kill. He had woke up from his grogginess as a playful voice spoke out. Almost got me, Naru-chan. Naruto looked and saw a young girl with blonde hair and green eyes. She was wearing a white dress with sandals as she gave a cheeky grin. You're going to have to work harder to get me, Naruto. Naruto gave a groan. Can't you let me sleep for a while, Saya? I have to leave tomorrow, ya know? Even if he wasn't evolved, he needed to rest to allow his cells to recuperate or heal. Now that he thought it, what would happen? Saya frowned as she sat next to Naruto. Are you sure you have to go? Why can't you stay with me? I want to see the world before I settle down. Besides, it's not like anything bad is going to happen to you, right? Saya gave a smile. You're right. Then Saya made a thinking gesture where the area between the index and thumb was placed next to her chin with the index and thumb pointed outwards. She then snapped, I know, let's make a promise. Naruto lazily opened one eye. Promise? Saya gave a thumbs up. Yeah, we make a promise that we'll meet each other in the future one day. Naruto huffed. Sure, whatever, as long as I can get some sleep. The next day when Naruto entered the next town, he overheard how bandits had attacked the home of Saya and her father, who was widower when his wife died in childbirth. Hearing this made Naruto put down all plans for traveling as he searched for the bandits who did this. Countless bandits died that one year he was searching when he finally found the whorehouse Saya was in. He found Saya in the back as those thugs used her body as their own personal plaything. As he tore the head off the final thug, he hugged Saya's body gently. Saya, I finally found you. He had hoped she was still alive as he tore through the bandit camps like a knife as he consumed the leaders. Having witnessed that much darkness made his kind heart turn to stone as he faced them off. Saya, naked as the day she was born, coughed as she was unused to not having anything in her mouth. Enna Naruto, before she fell over dead from exhaustion. She was forced to work day in and day out as customers use every sick fantasy there was out there. He, so the whore's dead. That fine, we'll just find another then. Naruto turned around to see all the gang members that he had missed. He gritted his teeth as he stood up and used a nearby blanket to cover Saya's dead body and cold, lifeless eyes. He didn't want her to see the darkness he had become even if she was dead. That day, the whorehouse ran red with blood and screams to the point where it was now a folk legend of a man who came back from the dead to seek vengeance for defiling his wife. The story was told to young children, mostly delinquents who thought it would be the ultimate test of courage. They never came back and the story multiplied into other towns and villages. Flashback end. Naruto's scarlet hair covered his eyes as he stood with his front at the army of Gatos. Rapists and bandit scum should all go to hell, as the first wave attempted to rush him. Naruto waited until they were close before shifting his right hand until a claw. It was not just any claw through. Where the fingers were solid 6 inches steel like alloy with jagged edges with two purpose in mind. The first was totally annihilation, with the other prolonged suffering. As Naruto sliced upwards diagonally, the ones on the left receive a blessing in disguise as they died instantaneously. The ones on the right were not so lucky as they lost their legs. Naruto continued their suffering as he used tendrils to cut their arms off and let them bleed to death. Gato was now shivering as he stared at the demon. How much money do you want? Gato bargained. Surely a child like would want something. Naruto stopped as he looked at the man responsible for ordering what happened to Saya. What I want? Fuinjutsu circle appeared from midair, is for you to die. Chains appeared from the circles as they cleanly sliced through the bandit army that Gato had gathered. The ones in the back were smart enough to make a run for it. Screw you guys, I'm going home. One of the bandits yelled. Die 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 die. Naruto maniacally screamed with an insane glint, causing the most of the genins to vomit unused to the bloody display. The Junins on the other hand, while used to it, were slightly uncomfortable because an unstable child had this kind of power. Minato had managed to see the inscription on the Fuinjutsu circles and was quite shocked. It was master-level Fuinjutsu combined with Uzumaki chakra chains. The only one that had this ability was his daughter and his wife. This got thinking about all logical outlooks before he remembered what Tsunade had said a long time ago. Kushina was working on some kind of resurrection jutsu. The details we don't know since the scroll only conveyed the plan outlook. Did Kushina manage to do it? Was Naruto in front of him? It was explained the look in his eyes when Naruto came down. Minato didn't know what to do, but one thing was certain. Where Naruto was, Kushina is never far behind. On a hill close to the bridge, Kushina was playing with herself while standing up as she watched her beloved child make quick work of these scum. As she did so, a black swirl appeared and the three ghouls along with the three figures appeared from the void, while Tobi then disappeared in a black void. Kushina didn't need to look as she shifted clothes onto her and gave out some orders. Orochimaru, take your experiments and have them hunt down the retreating worms. It's time we tested out their hunting capabilities. Orochimaru gave a nod before whistling and pointed to the mob while giving a single order: hunt those that run from this battle. The figures gave a grunt before moving, shown that they were bald with slinted eyes and pointed ears. Fangs slightly poke out from their mouths as they ran four-legged to their meal. Orochimaru gave salute as he followed them. Gotta make sure the ferals do their jobs. Kushina looked at the cloak figure as she grabbed the chest of the hooded figure. Look at my Sochi as he tears through the worms like a hot sword. And then looked at your Sochi as he vomits all over the battlefield. Mi Koda-chan. The hood came down as it revealed a female with onyx hair and red eyes as her mouth set in a frown as she was concerned about what her former friend was going to do. Compared to her associates, she only had enough power to rival cages where they could destroy the cages with ease. The sight of what was happening was sick to the genins. Kiba was doing his best to hold in his bile while Akamaru was hiding in Kiba's jacket hood. Not only did the poor dog witness a sight so horrible, he had smelled something so grotesque and vile. It was the scent of a lot of people with emotions that Akamaru picked out as fear, anger, sadness being the most common among the scents. Shino kept his cool, but to be honest he was unnerved at what was happening. The bug queens that dwell within his body were urging him to escape the vicinity. He was curious at the reason why this was happening. Sasuke was the worst among Team Kakashi. The boy puked out his breakfast and dinner. Seeing the carnage reminded him of the Uchiha massacre and the reason why he had decided to become an Avenger. But was this his fate then? To be consumed in hatred and anguish as the redhead boy was doing. Team 8 was doing fairly than their team partners as Hinata flinched at the sounds while Yakumo was trying to unfold some of her paintings for the expected battle. Mito, on the other hand, was twitching with anger that this guy was doing all this stuff while using her brother's name. Naruto was never this kind of person. He was sweet, gentle and understanding even when she was in the spoiled princess phase of her life. To see these indescribable acts was sacrilege in her eyes. The Jonins are doing the best in terms of holding back on their emotions, if only because of what they had seen throughout their lifetime as shinobi. Contrary to expectations, the life of a true shinobi was not all happy fun times. It was a thankless and tiring job with a life expectancy rate of 40 years. And that was because they were in an era of peace, or as close as they could get. The sight they were seeing? It was a 12-year-old boy eating the corpses of the fallen. Biting into the flesh, gouging out eyeballs before chewing them slowly and slurping up the blood as if he was an animal. To be or not to be, that is the question every man must ask. The boy spoke to himself as he lifted Gato's terrified and severed head. Don't look at me like that, I'm not a murderer. I don't harm people unless I have to. I am human and you are nothing more than trash. This world is trash, allowing scum like you to exist. Why can't you all just die? And why? Why is this world full of lies, lies, lies? Naruto yelled as he threw the head as far as he could. knocking several trees in the way down. Tazuna, who had kept quiet and out of the way, gulped as he witnessed this feat. Ka-chan, I shouldn't have left Ka-chan. She is the only person besides Saya-chan to know who I am. I must find Ka-chan. Minato, stepping forward and prepared to get right down to heart of the matter. He asked the question that will prove once and for all if this was truly his son. Naruto-kun, is this Ka-chan Kushina Uzumaki by any chance? Naruto froze before turning his head over to Minato's direction. All of the Konoha ninja can see that his eyes were different as his sclera was now black with his eyes now a golden color. Minato especially was breaking into a cold sweat as he wondered just what the hell did his wife did. Minato Namikaze, you're the one who did this to me. You turned me into this, die. Naruto disappeared from his position as Minato jumped back. It was the right choice as an axe kick from the boy created a large crater. Seeing no choice in the matter, he signaled the Jonins to protect the kids while he fought. Minato kept dodging while speaking, trying to get some sense into the boy. Naruto, I heard what Kushina did and I heard you now. Please stop for your two-san. Mito, eyes wide at her father's declaration, pointed at the two while looking at Kurenai. What is two-san saying? Ni-chan's dead. I killed him. She admitted with some hesitation about her part in her brother's cruel death. Kurenai looked at her student with some pity. She kneeled down and placed a hand on Mito's cheek. I don't know, but we'll get to the bottom of this later. Not to ruin the cute moment or anything, but I think that we should get our little Genins out of here, otherwise they might get caught in this. Kakashi pointed as he saw a few chakra chains that were getting closer and closer and closer as the boy fired them randomly, targeting the former Hokage. Anko blinked. Now that I think about it, why doesn't the Yondaime use the Hiraishin that he's so famous for? Kurenai responded, I know the answer to that one. Let's get as far away as we can. Mito blinked at what had Kurenai-sensei had just say. What are you say? She was knocked out by a neck chop by Kakashi, who grabbed her before she fell to the ground. Giving his sensei's daughter to Anko, he ordered, get the Genins out of here. I'll stay behind to support Minato-sensei as much as I can. Both Anko and Kurenai nodded before they looked at the Genins. Kurenai quickly made hand signs as she called, Genjutsu. Seimin, hypnosis. It was a B-ranked kinjutsu that placed her targets in a dreamlike state where she could give orders and they would follow it. However, a major drawback is that it doesn't do a thing against those who had stronger willpower than her or more than 6 people at a time. Luckily for her, the sights of what this Naruto had done shaken the mental state of the kids far more than she realized, and as much as she hated it, she had to take advantage of it. The reason why it was forbidden was because some genjutsu masters tend to use it to connive girls into being slaves. However, since it was primarily used on enemy kunoichi, it was given the okay until the end of the Third Shinobi World War, where it was agreed upon to destroy this jutsu and all records of it, including those who knew it. This was why she didn't want to use it, knowing that it could lead to her death, but knowing the personalities of some of the kids, she had to do it. Otherwise, it wouldn't just end with her death but the death of 2 squads. Naruto and Minato. Come on, Kiroi Senku, why aren't you using your famous Hiraishin no Jutsu? Did you forget all about it? Naruto taunted as hundreds of symbols appear in the air as chakra chains appeared from them and chased Minato down. Or perhaps the fact is you got too arrogant and didn't prepare any of your special kunai needed for it. Seeing no other way out, Minato sucked in a deep breath as he used a Kawarimi jutsu to replace himself using a log. The man coincidentally appeared a few feet away from Naruto, who had sensed what had happened. As he turned around in his rage-filled state, he didn't feel Kakushi's lightning-covered hand as it pierced his heart. As Naruto's body slumped, Kakashi, who had his Sharingan eye out, looked in pity at what had happened. He was one of the Anbu on duty that night after covering a shift for a friend. It was remain as the most infamous days yet to him, a day where he failed 2 more people who were dear to him. Today will be the same as he had to killed another person who was precious to him using the same technique that killed Ren. The gods must love tormenting him with the same thing over and over and over again. And why can't he feel his arm? As he removed his mind from his daydream, he saw the body had slumped but not fallen. Instead, Kakashi heard teeth gnashing as the hole from his attack forcibly closed itself with his arm still inside. Because of this, the part of the hand that was sticking out of Naruto's body had fallen to the ground with a sticky squelch as Kakashi jumped back as his pain receptors finally kicked in. As the Jonin jumped back, several tail-like structures of unknown matter came out of the lower back area, near the tailbone. The tails were closing in at a fast rate and Minato, within a split second, used the Hiraishin no Jutsu and locked in on the kunai he knew that his disciple carried with him everywhere. The man sent an open palm into the tail structures and in half a second, formed a giant Rasengan tall and wide enough that it acted as a shield. The force of the impact caused the Konoha shinobi to skitter back a few feet as Minato held onto Kakashi. "You alright?" Kakashi nodded. "I won't be much help with only one arm left, but I'll do my best." He then slightly flinched as blood still continued to ooze from his stump of an arm. Minato, seeing this, ordered, "Take care of that wound, I'll draw his attention. He's focused on me anyways." Naruto, who didn't care about what his opponent was thinking, merely roared before a feminine voice responded, "Naru-chan. What a lovely roar you have, but you still shouldn't behave like a wild animal even if you're angry." Naruto stopped. He remembered this voice even if he hadn't heard it for a very long time. It was Ka-chan. Both Minato and Kakashi freezed as the lovely redhead Uzumaki's second Jinchuriki stepped out from the forest as if she materialized from the shadows. Kakashi was simply astounded that at the nearly perfect image of a woman. He didn't know if he should feel guilty or ignored the fact that he had a boner for his sensei's wife, so that he decided to feel both. He was so into staring at Kushina that he forgot to keep pressure on the wound until he was nearly faint-headed before he kept the wound tightened. Kushina Uzumaki appeared to be in her 20s rather than 30s. Her figure seemed to be perfect and would have many women jealous, along with a kimono dress that said, "I have this and I'm not afraid to show off cause you can't touch." Her face seemed to radiate a kindness of a natural mother as she kneeled down and spread her arms. "Naru-chan." Naruto ran at his fastest speed, which was merely a blur to the Konoha shinobi. Kushina closed her arms and spun quickly before stopping, revealing Naruto was in her arms as he giggled like a little child. Kushina kissed his cheek. "How is Sochi doing? Does he still love his Ka-chan?" "Okay Ka-chan, it's time I went back anyways. I can't wait to tell you all the things I've seen." Naruto rapidly spewed as he made gestures. Kushina merely placed her index finger on his lips. Now, I know you're excited, but why don't we save it for later?" A dark vortex that was familiar to Minato appeared next to Kushina, and out came the masked man that haunted Minato since the day of the Kyuubi's attack and his children's birthday, the masked man that claimed he was Madara. If he was Madara, why was he here? It was when the man bowed to Kushina that he knew the reason why. It appears that the call to remove the children was true if this was the case. Minato had to chuckle a little. The saying, "No plan survives first contact," was true after all. This was supposed to be a simple mission that shouldn't even have shinobi appearing, and yet two very powerful enemy shinobi had appeared. The fate thing that guy's kid kept spewing from his mouth seemed to be more and more credible. The masked man bowed. "Naruto Dono, if you will just grab my hand, we'll be on our way." Kushina kissed Naruto's forehead. "Go with him. I still have some things before I can go home." "But what about?" Naruto tilted his head to point to the shinobi. Kushina responded, "They're part of the reason why it takes some time for me to return back. Just go for now with the masked man. I trust him to keep you safe." Not that her child needed it, but it was the thought that counts. As Naruto waved goodbye and disappeared, Minato started the conversation. "Kushina." "Shut up." Kushina looked at Minato with narrowed eyes as the pressure from the woman changed from a mother to that of a cold, calculating psychopath. Blarg. Minato turned to see that Kakashi on the ground, twitching as golden chakra chains bounded him, with one choking him. Knowing the chains belonged to Kushina, he turned his head only to find his wife had already close to his face. The former Hokage jumped back and found himself restrained while in the air. Kushina went to Minato's face and placed her hands on his cheeks. "We don't want Kakagaki to interrupt our little spat now, do we?" Minato was squirming as he tried to escape from the chains, even though he knew it was futile. The chakra chain's main focus was to suppress Biju chakra. Now, considering the fact that the chakra from the demon beasts were corrosive in nature, it stands as no surprise that a human is unable to break out of it. He asked in order to buy some time, "Why are you doing this? Betraying your home, your family? I can hear Mito crying every night begging for you to come home." Shut up, Kushina yelled. That child may have Uzumaki blood and flesh running through her veins, but she is no Uzumaki. No one from my clan would even do something which she had done. The only child I have is Naruto. She leaned closer as she sported an insane grin. But she is defiantly yours, seeing as how both of you seem to always take. Always taking things that doesn't belong to you. But if there was one sin both of you committed that makes me mad, it was that you both took Naruto from me. That was an accident, Kushina. I took responsibility for my mistake. You think you could fool me? Kushina's face was now set in neutral. That child stole from my baby, which led to you locking him in his own room to die a slow death. You both then took my attention elsewhere with your antics as he slowly starved, crying out to me in sadness, begging me to rescue him before he lost all hope and die a lonely death. All for some stupid prophecy. Minato's eyes widened as he tried to think about why that had to do anything. Kushina answered his thoughts. You honestly believed in that perverted fool Jiraiya and an old senile toad when he gave out a prophecy that a child shall bring peace to the world, and he believed it was your daughter. And so, you tried to distance me and my Sochi in order to prepare her for her destiny. When I tried to argue against, you plotted for a way to permanently separate the two of us without using a slave seal, since those could be broken and I would then be against your precious village. Her mouth turned to a sinister sneer. I could kill you right now and nothing in my plans for making a safe world for Naruto and me to live would be ruined. Then why don't you do it? Minato asked. Kushina backed away while still keeping the sneer. Now, where would the fun be in that? No, I want you to suffer as I did. I want you to feel the helplessness I felt, and then only then will you have my permission to die. Quote. She then leaned once more to Minato's ear and whispered, I know what is most precious to you and I shall have the pleasure of taking it away. As Kushina backed up into the shadows of the forest mist, the chains which cuffed Minato dissolved, but he just sat there as he was forced himself to believe in something he had tried to ignore. Kushina Uzumaki was no longer the woman he loved, and that thing that was wearing his son's skin was nothing more than a sick experiment. How could such a simple mistake he made ruined his family that he had worked so hard to create? He remembered the long days and nights as he and Kushina sat up and talked about their future together. How they were going to live together long enough to be old prunes watching over the grandchildren as one of their children or more took the handle of Hokage. He then stood up as he grabbed the unconscious Kakashi and placed his student's one remaining arm over his shoulders as he grabbed the other hand just in case there was still a chance to reattach it. Memories have their own places where he can reminisce on his failures. Now was a time for action. Kurenai and Anko, the other two Konoha-jonin, were doing their best to herd the genins under the effects of the Seimin Genjutsu and their client. The two women could hear screams and yelling from nearly everywhere around them, urging the two to go faster. The world's gone mad, Tazuna yelled as he drank from his canteen and ran. Anko laughed as Tazuna turned to look at her. As they ran, Anko said, the world is mad. It's just that the world knows how to hide it. We as shinobi knows this far better than anyone else. Tazuna's wondered why anyone would choose the shinobi job now. Sure, they were stronger than civilians like him, but if this was what they had to face on a daily basis, then he would stick with his carpenter job. A man came out the woods far behind from the group, causing them to watch warily as they kept moving. He was drenched in blood as he hunched back and vomited. When he looked back up, he saw the shinobi that he was originally supposed to kill. He waved his hand above his hand as he called out, please, help me. There's these things that. A blur from the side tackled the man until the woods again. Screams could be heard as pleas of mercy before it came to a stop with a sickeningly crunch. The group unanimously, although most of the group was hypnotized, decided to rush faster back to Tazuna's house. When they entered the house, Tazuna's daughter Tsunami looked out of the kitchen door. What's going on? Tazuna answered, it's dangerous outside right now. Where's Inari? He's outside right now. Tazuna was shocked. Why is he outside? He should be here instead. Don't worry, I believe I have him. A female voice called from a corner of the room. All the adults looked to see a figure covered in a black coat as she gently placed Inari on the floor. Kurenai made a few hand signs before stopping on the last one. Identify yourself. It's not nice to point at a person who just saved a little boy from being another victim in Kushina and Orochimaru's psychotic experiment. A hand then grabbed the figure by the throat as Anko pointed a kunai at the neck. Start talking. What do you know about that snake bastard? I can't say any more. Both of them are always watching and they have my family on the line. All you need to know is that right now, do not leave this house under any circumstances until the next day. The figure then pushed the kunai into her neck and then flipped Anko. The figure then turned around and jumped through the wall and continued off into the woods, leaving a crater in the wall. Kurenai and Anko looked through the wall before a voice behind them said, "That was unexpected." Kurenai jumped forward before turning around. She relaxed when she saw who it was. "Oh, it's just you two." She then froze while in the middle of wiping the sweat in her forehead. "What are two doing here? You should still be under the effects of my genjutsu?" Yakumo responded, "You forgot, sensei, that genjutsu doesn't really work on me and Shino-kun is from the Aburame clan. They got bugs that basically feeds on chakra." Shino nodded. It was logical for us as newly minted genins to retreat. There was no way for us to win against Naruto if he can defeat an army of bandits and whatever it was that caused the bandits to scream in fear. However, based on the personality of some our squad mates, they will stand their ground and die a pointless death. "Inari? Inari? Shinobi-san, Inari's not responding to me?" Anko and Kurenai looked to see that Tsunami had cradled Inari's head as the boy just laid lifeless on the ground. Anko took a look and knew what it was. He traumatized. Probably saw something that will stick with him for the rest of his life. Tsunami asked frantically, "Is there any way we can get rid of it? Not without damaging his mind even further. The best way right now is to let him sort it out himself while supporting him from the sides." Tsunami nodded at the explanation, but she still wished she could do something for her own child. Outside the house. Outside the house was Makoto Uchiha with the hood down. Standing next to her watching from a window was Kushina Uzumaki and Orochimaru along with 3 abominations that Orochimaru had called ferals. Kushina, who saw what was happening inside, turned around and ordered, "It's enough, now. We have the data we came for and played mind games on the man. Let's return back to base." Orochimaru asked, "Are you sure? Your ex's daughter is still in there and she has the other half of the Kyuubi. We can go in and take it without any problems." I said that's enough. Besides, Kushina's signature psychopathic smile began to form. What better way to crush him than take everything he cared about at once? "You mean?" "That's right. 6 months from now is when Konoha will host the Chunin exams. They won't be expecting an attack, nor will anyone, even that fence-sitting Rako Noki, will suspect that our base is underneath the very same place we attacked. Let's go. I can feel him coming." As everyone but Makoto started to walk away, a tiny ray of hope now entered her heart. She hoped that the reason why Kushina didn't want to attack the place was because of the civilian woman who reminded Kushina of herself. Perhaps, the old Kushina was still in there somewhere. She'll have to everything she can to restore her friend back to the way she was. Naruto. Naruto was skipping through the familiar walls of his old underground home. It was as if he had never left in the first place. When he had left so long ago, he had wanted to experience the light that many of the people whose memories he stolen. Friendship, loyalty, love, it was one thing to experience it from a memory, but to actually experience it with whatever substitute is his body. He wanted to feel it, to touch it, and he did for a time. However, what is held in a hand must eventually be let go, and Naruto had experienced it with the death of Saya. When she had died, a part of him wanted to let her go just like she wished. While he could have brought her back as a ghoul, she didn't want to eat human flesh and threatened that she will find a way to kill herself if he had done so. Another part of him didn't seem to care at all. Sure, she was one of his few friends, but if she wanted to die so badly, let her die. She must have not cared about him if she wanted to leave him all alone. It's not like he needed her anyway, he had still had his beloved mother. His Ka-chan was always there for him when Mito bullied him, when Minato cared more for his daughter. She took care of him and always has, even if he decided to leave her for a bit. 2 slender hands reached under Naruto's armpit and covered his eyes. A voice whispered, "Guess who?" Naruto decided to play around for a little bit. HMMH. Who could it be? Could it be? He turned his 180 degrees looking at Kushina, who had a miffed expression. "Ka-chan." Kushina lifted Naruto up and rubbed her face in Naruto's own. "Welcome home, Sochi-kun. I got a surprise for you." Naruto loved surprises, especially when they came from someone he loved. Kushina motioned at a shadow and light flapping could be heard. Naruto could see a little crow spandex was surprised since it was a creature that he knew. Emergency food, what are you doing here? Emergency food was the name Naruto had given to the little crow that had followed him everywhere after he had left the base for a month. The name was a reference to the fact that if Naruto couldn't find anything to eat, he would eat the bird in an emergency. Kushina smiled. Did you really think that I would let you explore the world without me supervising your safety? She pointed at emergency food. I figure out a way to connect my senses to another with a seal. Naruto was a bit miffed and was going to responded to the fact that Kushina had stalked him when he wanted to explore on his own when Kushina interrupted him. I didn't do anything other than observe since I knew how much you wanted to see the world. Pinky promise? Naruto held his pinky finger out to which Kushina grabbed with her own pinky promise. With that done, Kushina lifted Naruto and walked towards their shared room. Why don't you tell me all about your adventures? Don't you already know everything? I don't know how you feel during the exploration, so tell me how it felt during that time. Naruto scratched his head. Well, after a month that I left, I met this girl named Saya.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.